Right, folks, welcome back to Bru Time. This is episode, I think it's 84, and we've got Sandra and Fiona from Adventure or ADV Travelbug. How you doing?
Hello. Hi, Bruce.
How's it all going? Everything okay?
Yes, thank you for having us.
Oh, pleasure, my pleasure. I was chuffed when you got in touch. So yeah, fantastic. Great to hear a bit more about your story and see what's going on. Right, we just had a quick chat there before we started. Yeah, the general format is I post up who's coming on, people pose us some questions, and then we run through them. But before we do that, can I just hand it over to you? I normally do this. Just what's your names? Where'd you come from? What do you do?
Okay.
Over to you.
My name is Sandra Steliga. I'm originally from Germany and I moved to the UK when I was 16. I studied in the UK and then I spent 10 years living and working in London in IT and finance, neither of which I was particularly passionate about. But I always had a big passion for traveling. So any holiday I had, I always used to go on little backpacking trips. But I always had this dream of doing a round the world trip. And towards the end of 2017, I sort of took a step towards that direction and quit my job. And a few months later, I met Fiona.
And I'm Fiona Cheng. I was born in Leicester in the UK. Before I quit my job to travel, I used to be a health and safety manager in utilities and construction. And then in early 2018, I went on Tinder, met Sandra, had a good first date, and then we decided to travel together.
Now, that must have been, it's a little bit like my wife and I started my plan and then I met my wife. So that was an interesting first date. I mean, how did that go with you guys? Did the topic of your world trip come up, Sandra, in the first date or not?
Yeah. No, it definitely did, because at this point I had quit my job and I had I'd already bought a motorbike in the US. So I knew at the very least that I was going to the US to do sort of some riding around there. Yeah. And I think it came up very quickly. And I think Fiona was a bit like more excited about this motorbike trip than I was at the time. And
So, I mean, there's a whole story which we can get into, but essentially some years or a couple of years down the line, the pair of you headed off, didn't you? And you were going to ride, initially you were going to do like Dead Horse down to, was it Ushuaia down in Patagonia you were heading?
So we sort of wanted to leave in August of the year when we met. So that was in 2018. We met in May. And
so there was only meant to be a few months.
So the idea was to sort of do ride around the US for a few months. At least that was my plan. But I have to say, it never felt like Fiona joined me, because at the time I really had such a vague idea of what I was doing that we really sort of decided everything together. So my plan was 3 months USA and then backpack around the world. And then Fiona said, oh, maybe we could ride up to Alaska. And I said, well, if we go up to Alaska, we might as well go to Ushuaia, And then
as you do. Yeah.
It grew. And then within 2 weeks of sort of being on the bike, it then, we sort of really fell in love with it. And it just sort of continued from there. But then we hadn't, things didn't quite go to plan, because we were meant to leave in August. But then I had a motorcycle crash in London on the bike that I was riding at the time. And that sort of threw all the plans upside down, because then I first had to sort of recover from my injuries there. And so we actually ended up leaving in 2019 in April. So that's actually when we then flew out 6 months later, and then started the trip from there.
So what happened in you? I tell you what, it's very rude of me. Do you have a drink of choice?
I do, actually.
Fantastic. What's that, gin and tonics?
Yeah, well, I have a gin and tonic. Fiona doesn't drink.
I've got juice, I don't drink.
She's an elderflower.
No worries. Right, pleasure. Slang stew.
Yes.
Excuse me. Right, so that accident that you had, talk us through it. What happened?
So I was just riding my little naked bike around London. It was mainly just sort of mode of transport, because I didn't like getting on the tube. And this was really shortly before we were meant to leave. And I was just riding into town to meet a friend for lunch. And it was a beautiful sunny day. The road ahead of me was empty. I was maybe going a little bit too fast. But essentially, a van pulled out right in front of me, and literally like that, because he wanted to join the other side of the road where there was a lot of traffic. So he literally just like pulled out, came to a stop, and it was impossible for me to brake. So I just like went into it. I have no recollection of the accident, so I just sort of woke up in hospital. I broke my pelvis in 4 places, and I'm very, very grateful that A, I don't remember anything, and B, I didn't actually need any surgery in the end, because as long as if it breaks in the front, if it's in the front, we learned you don't need surgery. Whereas if you break it sort of in the back, it's more complicated. So that was broken in 4 places. It all sort of healed by itself.
Wow. Well, you're lucky that it healed by itself. Yeah. Otherwise, you would have had to have surgery.
God, yeah. But I've had sort of kind of similar. I had a car pull out of me when I was traveling home from work, and thankfully I only did my shoulder. I can't imagine how painful your pelvis must be. It must be horrendous.
But I have to say, because I have really no recollection, of the accident, and then by the time I woke up in hospital, I was already on like such high painkillers that I never think of like pain when I think of this accident. It was more like discomfort, because then, you can't really walk, obviously, for a bit. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, they just like gave me like really like strong painkillers, more than I needed probably.
I was a total wimp. My wife actually arrived in hospital before they left me for like 5 hours with me before they tried to set my shoulder. And I was just whimpering like a baby. I was in so much pain. But she got the phone out and started recording it all. So it's all on video. But anyway, right. So fast forward, and you're sort of repaired from your accident and you're heading off. Yes. What was that like, heading off?
It was interesting because at the time, I have now fully recovered, but at the time I did a lot of physio, and I was not 100% sure how it would be for me to, go back onto a motorbike. And I only ever had like a small naked bike in London. And then the bike I bought in the US was a BMW F800 GS. So it was much bigger. Yeah. And I wasn't entirely sure like how I'd find it, and then
with me on the back. And
I know. I was just about to say, you were pillion, aren't you, Fiona? Well, weren't you, Fiona? Yeah.
At the time, she's not anymore, right. At the time she was. And we got there, and the bike looked so big to me. I'd seen it in a dealership here in the UK. I went to have a look at it before, just after I bought it. I was like, what did I actually buy? But it didn't have all the
So you bought it without seeing it?
I did, yeah. I bought it without seeing it. And then
in America.
And then I'm like, and I thought I better have a look at what I bought. And I just went into a dealership and asked them if I could take it for a test ride, and they let me, and it was fine. But when it doesn't have all the crash bars and stuff on it, it doesn't look as intimidating. And then I got there and I was like, oh my God, it's a monster, it's got like all these crash bars. It had these extra wide panniers on the side, extra large, and it's just looked really big. And in addition, I always hated, even when I just was on my naked bike, to go over gravel. I didn't like it. And the bike was literally to get out of the place where the bike was just this really long gravel road. And I just thought, this is so uncomfortable.
The first ride I didn't join her just so she could get some confidence and stuff like this. But we lost her for about 5-10 minutes.
I just couldn't get out the driveway. I just thought, oh my God, this is so uncomfortable. And then we were on the road, and it was okay on the road. And then I guess we sort of learned as we went along.
Yeah, but within 3 weeks into it, we'd completely fallen in love with it, and our plans just kept growing and growing and growing.
Yeah. So what bike did you, Sandra? What bike did you ride before then in the UK? You said
it was a Suzuki Gladius.
All right, you went from that to the F800 to
So I always wanted to have a Ducati Monster, but because in London, it's just like I didn't have a garage or proper parking, and just because of like theft and everything,
Last
the
2
Suzuki
minutes
Gladius was sort of much. It looked kind of similar, but it was much cheaper. Well, it wasn't that much cheaper, but it was just like not something that people would just steal, unless it was like opportunistic. And so like the insurance was cheap, and I thought, oh, let's be sensible and go for this like Suzuki Gladius. So I rode that for about 5 or 6 years.
Brilliant. How long do you ladies have this evening? How long have you got to chat?
Oh, we have no time restriction.
Sure. Don't say that on here, because we'll still be going at about 10, 11 o'clock tonight. Okay, no worries. Just so I can gauge, how we do the questions and things like that. Okay. All right, then. So once you get to America, where'd you go? What's the path? Let people know where you went, what you did.
So we picked up the bike in Oregon. So that was naturally our starting point. And none of the sort of motorbike gear we had was sort of suitable for, like city riding and adventure riding. It's just like not the same thing. So we had to buy everything from scratch, and we were waiting for like a lot of things to arrive. So we sort of based ourselves out of Bend for a little bit.
For about 2 weeks.
Yeah, and just did like little day trips to Crater Lake, and we went up to Redwood National Park. And then once the gear had all arrived, we started heading north, because of course we thought we were going to go through Canada and Alaska. And then we got to Vancouver, and we couch surfed with this really lovely couple that happened to be bikers as well. Yeah. And we told them that the next day we would be going up to Banff National Park, and they were really, really surprised.
They said, you're definitely not going, even though it was like mid-May, but they had like the worst winter or something, a really, really bad winter. And they said, impossible, like with the gear you have, you're going to freeze to death sort of thing. And we're like, oh.
And not only could we not go to Banff, but Alaska was completely off limits. And what happened is we'd always planned to go in August, and we knew that was the right time to go. And then we didn't realize that like May and August is like makes a huge difference.
Huge.
So
just poor planning on our part.
Yeah. So we did ride across British Columbia, but we only saw a small part of Canada, and then we never made it to Alaska, which was what Fiona was.
What I wanted. But
I was the same. Yeah, I didn't make it either. I was gutted.
And then we spent 3 months really riding, I don't want to say the West Coast, because we didn't stick to the coast, but the western states of the US. And I mean, it was so beautiful. They've got so many beautiful national parks that I think we really wish we would have had longer.
And we also really wish we camped at that time.
Yeah, because we only
eats up the budget.
Yeah.
But not just that, just the fact, I think
we are beautiful scenery. So,
I mean, just to think that we could have been like wild camping in all these beautiful national parks, which are so empty, like you're not allowed to wild camp. I mean, in very few places, but normally you're not allowed to wild camp in the UK or in Germany or some other European countries. And you're just sort of restricted to going onto these campsites, So to think that you could be amongst like in this amazing scenery in the US and set up camp anywhere, it's like a luxury, really.
Absolutely.
But we didn't have camping gear at the time. But we wish we did. Yeah.
So what you set off to go to Alaska without any camping gear? You were just motel it on the way up.
Yeah, I guess that was the plan.
Maybe that's not even possible. I don't know. We obviously were really open.
We kind of winged it, really.
Honestly, it could be the best way. Could be the best way, definitely.
Yeah, we met on the first date, and there wasn't much of a plan. We just said, "Yeah, we'll travel."
Brilliant! I love that. Awesome. Awesome. I think a lot of the time, I find people, like when they come up and chat to me about it, or I'm doing talks and stuff, and people ask questions, people get bogged down in logistics and the details of it, and I sometimes feel I'm a little bit sort of blasé about it, or maybe a wee bit lapsadaisical, because I kind of say to people, look, just don't plan too much. No, obviously I do say know the seasons so that you don't turn up and it's 55 degrees or minus 55 degrees, or at least, be prepared for it, and know your sort of shipping points, have a rough idea what way you want to go. What are you going to go? Land crossings? Are you going to ship by air? Are you going to ship by sea? And just have an idea as to where you need to contact, who you need to contact for that. But other than that, I just say to people, have your passport, credit card, phone, and go. But it's easier said than done, isn't it? Because you guys sound like you just went for it, but a lot of people just don't make that leap, do they?
I think what happened is the guy that I bought the motorbike off was a keen adventure rider himself. And he was, he knew the US very well because he'd ridden all over it. And he said, I think he had a lot of sort of use. He said, I asked him like, oh, what about the insurance for the bike or this or that? He said, don't worry, you'll arrive and I'll take you here and we'll sort it all out and I'll help you with your route planning. And the thing is, I think that's actually part of our mistake, that we sort of relied on him a little bit. And at no point did he mention that it was no longer possible to go to Alaska. It's not his responsibility, of course, but when you kind of just, he was in the US and he was an experienced adventure rider, and we kind of just, picked his brain for a lot of this stuff.
But we learned on the road, and then after that we definitely obviously made sure that the seasons were right every time we crossed the borders a bit further down the line and stuff like this. So it was a lesson learned.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about, isn't it? You learn as you go, for sure. So, this story develops somewhat, doesn't it? So Vancouver, you sort of realise you're not heading north anymore up to Alaska. So I take it, you turn around, you start heading down through the western states, and what's the plan now?
Exactly this, and we were actually hoping that our visa would get renewed when we come back through, but that doesn't happen because you actually got to fly back to your home country before that actually happens.
Right.
And so then we crossed over to Mexico. We spent a lot of time there, actually, didn't we?
We crossed into Baja California first, and we did that. And that was really lovely. And then from there, we took the ferry onto the mainland. And in total, we spent a good 5 months in Mexico.
Wow.
That was
We decided to travel a little bit slower by that point because when we were in the US, because we were capped for 90 days, and actually we had less because some of the days we had in Canada, we had to move every single day. And we just wanted to slow it down a bit. And that's how we prefer to travel anyway. So. Yeah.
Mexico is such a great country, isn't it? I loved Mexico.
I think we underestimated, first of all, how big it is. You can see how big it is on the map, but when you get there, you're like, whoa, it takes such a long time from one place to another. But we've fallen in love with so many different areas of Mexico. And it was really, I really loved exploring the different regions of Mexico. And I think that's really when we had sort of our first off-road challenges. And it was really good.
I found the people there as well really welcoming. I was conscious of all the news reports of what is going on in Mexico, with the cartels and everything. And obviously anyone who's not travelled overland is very scared when you mention that you're travelling through Mexico. How did you deal with that? Did you have any trepidation, or did you just go for it?
So we weren't that concerned. We noticed that people, specifically in the US, are sort of really like, oh, Mexico, you need to be very careful. And but we definitely went in with an open mind. And I think one of our first experience was we had just crossed the border and we were in Ensenada, which is sort of a city, just one of the main cities after you cross the border. And we were meant to just couch surf there for one night and then keep going. And our host was a winemaker in the region. And I love wine, and he said, if you want, you can come to work with me. And it was really incredible. We got on so well with him. He was so kind and hospitable. We went to work with him.
I went to work with him. Sandra was drinking all different types of wine by 9 a.m.
No, it was part of the job. We were sitting on the barrels and we were drinking from the barrels, making sure the wine is aging well. And Fiona
quality assurance, isn't it? You're quality assuring the product.
And Fiona was adjusting the sulfate levels and taking some measurements and adding some substance to the wine. I don't know about this, but and good fun. We spent a whole week, we were and that never happens to us. We said we're going to spend a night. And the thing about Ensenada in itself, it's not like one of the most amazing cities at all, it's nice because you can explore the wine routes from there, and there's definitely great restaurants. But it just I think we just had this really, really warm, welcoming host. And it was just like such a nice introduction into Mexico. And it helped us really like to sort of slow down and set the pace for the 5 months that we then spent there.
And the hospitality like shown within like Mexico is definitely something that we're probably a bit more familiar with, like culturally. So we actually really enjoyed it, and we felt very at ease actually.
Yeah, I was sort of amazed by, there was a couple of places that I travelled to that really sort of struck me as to how friendly people were, probably because in my mind before I went, they were the places that I thought, oh, this might be a bit iffy. Russia was one, obviously a bit topical at the moment. And Mexico was another one. Well, in fact, most of sort of Central America, I was a bit, what's this going to be like? And they're just, often they're some of the most friendly places, aren't they? Yeah. As you said, you just go with it, don't you?
Yeah. 100% agree, actually. We have so many people, actually. We were at one point in, I think it was Panama, and we were fixing our luggage rack for it was the 4th time or something. And these men were just like, oh, where did you ride from? Because we're 2 women on a bike. And we were like, oh, from like the US. And they said, you went through Mexico? We're like, yes. And then they listed absolutely every single country. And they're like, Guatemala, Nicaragua. We're like, yes. And they're like, and you had no problems? And we're like, no. Yep. There was no issues. And they're like, really surprised that we actually rode through all the countries to get to them at this point. And,
there's obviously some troubles in these countries, but the thing is, they're never intended as tourists, right? So whatever, like a drug cartel has got no interest in bothering me on a road trip going through the country. And I think as long as you're just like a little bit streetwise, London is not the safest place in the world either,
Absolutely.
We were definitely not scared. We were conscious of police stopping you and fining you for absolutely no reason. We had a lot of stories about that. We didn't have that issue, People warned us about these roadblocks and having to pay people off. We saw them, they let us go because we were tourists. So it was, So, we were aware, of what other people might have said, but we definitely, we went there with a very open mind.
But because of what people said, we were then prepared for it. So we had photocopies of our passport. So then, give photocopies and all of this. And I know lots of change in the pockets for the roadblocks, just in case. Our pockets were so heavy at one point because there was a section of Mexico where even the locals were like, you really shouldn't take this route. But we didn't want to travel like all the way around. So we're like, okay, we'll do an 8-hour day, which is not how we ever would ride. And we said we would just not stop apart from to refuel at the petrol station, like eat within the petrol station and then go again. But we had no issues that day either. And so we were lucky, but like the pockets were full, ready with like little change to give to like the roadblocks and stuff.
Yeah, you divvy your money up all over the place. Lots of different, socks, boots, different places on the bike. Yeah. When you were saying that you met the guy who owns the vineyard, and he invited you to stay and you start work, that's that sort of thing where strangers welcome you into their homes and their lives happens all the time on the road, doesn't it? But when you hear somebody saying it, and like for me, I've been out that scene for a long time. I've been back 8 years, so like even when I hear people say it, I'm like, wow, you just turn up at a stranger's house. You do, don't you? But it's like the scene, it's like the plot of a bad movie, isn't it? Like stranger invites you into home. Yeah, exactly. But when you're on the road, that's part of it. You just roll with it, don't you?
Yes.
And see what adventure it opens up to.
We even stayed with complete strangers in El Salvador, it continued sort of throughout Central America, and we've always had great experiences when people sort of opened up their homes and welcomed us. Yeah,
I know you enjoyed Costa Rica. You went to the sort of the retreat type places there, didn't you?
No, that was a treat.
That was a one-off treat. We definitely don't travel in luxury all the time.
So I tell you what we do. So like on a day-to-day basis, we sort of rough it. And then we didn't do that during the pandemic, but before the pandemic, every 3 or 4 months, we're like, okay, let's get like a proper hotel room and pretend.
Definitely.
Do you know what I mean? Just to sort of recharge the batteries. And when we went to Costa Rica, we wanted to go to these hot springs, and they were quite. I mean, you don't have to pay everywhere to go. You can also go for free, but these particular ones actually were quite expensive to get into. But if you stayed at this hotel, you could go there for free, and then we got for free. I mean, it was a treat. That's not how we travel. I wish maybe one day I would love to, but that particular day.
We actually had a sweet corn tuna on crackers for our lunch.
That was so funny. So we were in this really expensive hotel, and we had this gorgeous balcony that was looking out onto what was that volcano called? Arenal, and unobstructed views, and the best restaurants in this hotel, but we didn't want to pay that much money, so we just like tinned tuna, sweet corn, crackers, apple, and we just it was so ridiculous. We were in this really nice hotel eating tinned fish,
Beautiful. I did Costa Rica the other way. I came from the south to the north, and my plan was just to go through it one day, just go through it in a day, because I had the
a day.
I was just like, I've got to get to the States, because this was 3/4, in fact almost towards the end of my trip, really, to be honest. So I was like focusing on get to the States, do that, get home. But but anyway, so I stopped for fuel and end up just meeting this American guy, because it's full of it's full of Americans and Canadians, isn't it, who are all on like, they're all on these retreats trying to get off cocaine and booze, and they do it by smoking joints, doing yoga and drinking loads. It's a total party scene, isn't it? What a place. So this guy was just like, he got chatting with me, and it turns out he raced for Suzuki back in the 60s or 70s. And he just said, look, where are you going tonight? So I said, well, just heading through. He's like, please be my guest, stay at my house tonight. I live up on top of this mountain, and I'm heading into the city for work, and I'll be home tonight. And I just thought, by this point, yeah, okay, awesome, roll with it, let's do it. So he gave me the directions. This guy had this beautiful villa atop a gorgeous mountain that, similar to what you were saying, had this view out over the ocean and the mountains. It was stunning. So I get to the top, and his gardener met me. His gardener came down this mountain on a quad, and like showed me to what I thought was the villa, and that's the pool house. It's this beautiful, great big building next to a pool. So a bit like you, I've got a picture of me in a pool, living the high life. I love Costa Rica, awesome place. So you then went to Panama, and then you did the yacht, didn't you? You sailed to Colombia, is that right?
Yeah, we did.
That was an experience.
Interesting.
Is
it as good as everyone say, or
I tell you what, I don't know if we knew 2 people that were that were ahead of us, and we asked them, how was it? And they said, the sea can get a bit rough, but it's okay. And we had a very bad experience. The conditions weren't even that bad. Like, they were just like average. It wasn't like super rough. And we were cramped onto this boat. So there's a really good one called Steliga, which wasn't going at the time. So we were on
card is also good, but they also had just a lot of people on
it's too many people on the boat. And essentially, except 3 people, everybody was throwing up for the majority of the trip next to each other. And then at night, the boat was just like rocking like this, and I was just like, this is horrendous. So in the first 2 or 3 days, you visit all these beautiful remote islands, the San Blas Islands, and that's obviously stunning. Amazing. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, now it's 42 hours non-stop to Cartagena. And I was just, everyone was sick within a few hours of leaving.
I wasn't actually sick. I was just nauseous. One of the ones. Yeah, I was one of the ones that wasn't physically sick, but I felt so nauseous.
Everybody did.
It was so bad.
And the other thing is, it was very bad for the bike, So it was like, I'm glad I saw the San Blas Islands, but I'm never, ever, ever doing such a trip again. It really has put me off sailing. And then the bike was just ruined afterwards. It was completely, oh my God.
We made the mistake of servicing the bike and changing some parts a little bit ahead of time, because we thought, okay, if we change it here, then it'll last a bit longer once we've sailed. don't change your parts or service your bike prior to us sailing, because your bike will be really rusty and like all the other parts. I mean,
and then in addition, we got the bike back, and I sat on the bike, but I was still feeling a little bit nauseous, and so like it just like slipped out of my hand because I was still like going like this, and next to me was a bunch of other bikes, and it was like a domino effect, ding, 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 and I said, oh my god. And then the police turns up, and I just so happened to have bought insurance 10 minutes before. I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, here's the insurance. And they said, oh, that insurance is not valid. And he said, I think he said to me, it only works if you are driving, but you were stationary, so you just have to pay for the damage. And then they left. And then they left, and they said, you need to negotiate with each and every one of these people individually. And that was an interesting experience.
I mean, luckily, it didn't cost us too much. No,
it didn't, surprisingly, but it was.
There is no worse feeling, I think, than being seasick. I've had it once in my life, and it's put me off. It put me off going away in a boat for a long, it's a horrible
long feeling,
time.
Isn't it? I mean, and I think there is also the difference between one being seasick, but you're going to kind of get onto land soon. And then the other one is being surrounded completely by the open sea and knowing that this isn't going to stop anytime soon. And I think it just adds another level of nauseousness. Yeah.
So, Colombia, this is where things sort of take on another turn. What happens in Colombia?
Well, we got to Colombia. Well, actually, we were still on the boat when we got to Colombia, and this is when coronavirus was was quite big in the news by this point. And we weren't allowed to just go to the port. So we had to stop in the sea, and someone would have to come out to us, and they asked everybody on the boat where everyone has been the last few months. So bear in mind, everyone's a traveller. So it's like you've got to list all these countries you've been in the last 3 months. And everyone was like, okay. Everyone like kind of got the green light because it wasn't like a red flag or anything, apart from one guy who had been to like Brazil or something. And they're like, oh, Brazil, when were you there? Which part of Brazil were you? And we're thinking, oh no, we're not going to be able to get off the boat at this point. But luckily we get off the boat, we manage, she drops the bike, all the dominoes go down. And
the next thing is that the fuse box blew up. So some seawater had gotten under the seat. And I thought it was odd because while we were sailing, the light kept coming on.
Yeah, the light kept coming on and off.
This is not normal. And then we wanted to rinse all the salt water, off. And so we went just to wash the bike, and it just like started fuming, and we took the seat off, and it just looked like the fuse box was melting away in front of our eyes. So we had to disconnect the battery quickly. Of course, you couldn't buy a fuse box in that part, of Colombia. It would have to be sent from Bogota, but we had a time restriction.
Yeah, because I needed to catch a flight within 3 days, so we had to cross in 3 days to Bogota for me to catch my flight. This was always planned because I was going to my friend's wedding, and then we decided once I come back in a month later, we would carry on exploring Colombia. But that obviously never happened.
So I booked an Airbnb, luckily, because it was very hard for Europeans to get accommodation. Just sort of when the country went into lockdown, there were a lot of hotels that wouldn't let you in, and some friends got really, really caught out at the time. But I had always booked this apartment for a month because I was always waiting for Fiona in Colombia. But then we only had 3 days to get there, which again, we don't like traveling so fast, but we said, let's just like get her onto the plane, and when she comes back, we'll do Colombia properly. So from Cartagena with this fuse box, which we finally got repaired, and they said, if you're lucky, you'll get to Bogota, but do not go any further with it. I mean, I am surprised somebody even managed to sort of fuse this thing back together. It looked terrible. We made it through Bogota, just going through the mountains for 3 days nonstop. Was it like 3 or 2 days?
No, it was 3 days, and it was relatively easily done. And we're like stopping in like the middle of nowhere, like the smallest villages. And even those living in there, I think we pulled up one night, and we decided we'll just grab some food quickly in like the little village next to us. And a little girl just like stared at us. was kind of like in horror, but you knew she wanted to ask you a question. So we said hi. And then she was like, oh, where are you from? And we're like, oh, we're from like UK, Europe. And then she looked really horrified and was like,
you've got the plague.
Yeah. She goes, have you just come here to escape coronavirus? And we're like, no, we've been here for like a year. We haven't been back in Europe for like a whole year now. And she was like, oh, okay. And then she kind of like runs off. And then she ran off to tell everyone in the village that the Europeans said it.
News travels fast, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then we got to Bogota. I managed to get my flight. And I managed to leave the country 10 minutes before it went onto lockdown. But then I flew into lockdown into the UK. So, then Sandra was waiting there. Well, she thought she was going to wait there for me until we returned. But she did lock down there.
How long were you locked down for then in Colombia?
So I did a month. And initially I said, I'm in my mind, how long can a pandemic be? I was like, 3 months is going to be done. So I wanted to extend my stay because in my mind, I sort of had this idea of doing it with 0 air miles. And I kind of somehow didn't want to go back, I just really wanted to stay there and wait it out. And, I mean, Colombia is not very expensive. I had a really, really nice apartment for a few £100, for a month. And the food was also so cheap that it was kind of cheaper than coming back here, It was cheaper than staying out there. And I just, kind of just thought I'll wait things out. And then it was interesting because I have a flat in London, which I was renting on Airbnb. This is how, I sort of financed the trip on my side. And during the pandemic, what happened is obviously everybody cancelled and you weren't getting any money and everyone was sort of, their apartments were empty. And I imagined that my Airbnb host in Bogota would be in the same situation. But I think he just started putting the prices up, and I thought, well, you should be so lucky that I'm here, and it wasn't a matter of being able to afford it. I was also an Airbnb host and I thought, well, I've got no one in my apartment and I would be so lucky if someone just happened to be there and I'm here and you're just going to raise the prices. So because he did that, I then thought, you know what, if he's going to do that, I'm just going to fly home because, I just didn't I didn't want to think about moving within Bogota because it was just during the pandemic, it just
I get you.
It was also weird, women could only go out one day, men another. They're very strange Corona rules. And I just thought, I'll just fly home and come back with Fiona later, know. And I think in the end, was I there for a month or a month?
Just over a month. And we still thought we were going to go back in another month or two. So we literally left absolutely everything there.
And everything is still there. But
it's still there now.
Yeah, but Fiona was in the UK and, I have a UK passport and a German passport and the UK embassy just wasn't organizing anything for any stranded people, but the German government was, and I could only get back to Germany essentially. So I went back to Germany and then we were apart still because Fiona was in the UK, I was in Germany, but we couldn't see each other for about 3 months. So,
about 3 months.
So that was not
But we've seen each other 24/7 for so long.
Oh, come on.
So then, I mean, we'll chat about what has happened over the whole COVID thing because obviously there's been a lot of developments there, hasn't there? Fiona, you've passed your test. You're now riding. You've been out. You've been traveling around Europe. You've been doing loads. We'll cover that later on in the podcast, but how about we crack on with some questions because I'm conscious of time, otherwise we will still be here at 2:00 in the morning. I think there's quite a few questions to get through. Okay. First off, if we head over to the clan over on Patreon, so folks, that's patreon.com/TeapotOne. First one, Justin, Geek and Cycle. Hello all. Hope you're happy and healthy. One of the soft skills required when traveling two up is dealing with personality differences. Spending miles, days and months, etc., in or on a small vehicle, you're bound to hit a snag here and there. What would you say has been the biggest argument or eye-opener with traveling together via motorcycle? Yeah, now that must be an interesting dynamic.
I will be honest. So first of all, I know. Okay, so like, I think if a couple decides to suddenly go on a 2-up round the world trip, maybe like it's a little bit more intense than us doing it, because we went from meeting each other to, like, we never lived together. We only ever traveled together. Do you know what I mean? So like our honeymoon.
You didn't even live together.
So we literally
we met
and then we went traveling, and that was it.
Wow.
You know. And so we never, like, I think a lot of the reasons why people butt heads when they head off is because they need to adjust. You know, they need to adjust because normally you live together, everyone goes to their jobs. I mean, at the time before Corona, people actually were leaving the house, weren't they? And then you come back and you sort of almost just get used to like spending the evening together. But we went from literally, I think,
well, our first date was like already 4 days, so that was very intense. And then the second date,
we booked our first holiday. The third day, we were supposed to meet on this Greek island, but then I had the accident, and so it was in hospital instead. And on the fourth day, she picked me up with a wheelchair, and we were together ever since, like literally 24/7. So I think it's a little bit different for us in that we, like, there wasn't this like huge adjusting period, because this is kind of like, I mean, maybe we will have this when we ever move in together into a place, and then we'll have it in reverse. But I will say, because obviously, I mean, yeah, of course, sometimes we don't argue much, but sometimes it's just like,
it's usually triggered by my hunger.
Oh yeah, well, that's not an argument, but Fiona gets hangry, and I find that really frustrating because I don't have that. Like, I don't understand why that happens.
So it's usually solved by food.
Yeah, that's easy. And I think I think for me, maybe one thing, to be like really honest, is Fiona is very particular in how she likes to pack things. Yeah, she is like every single.
It's all coming out now, isn't it? It's all coming out now.
She knows where everything is. If I ask her like, "Where's like the hairbrush?" she'll know exactly where it. Like for me. Like, I mean, roughly it's good. Like, if you know, okay, our electronics are here, these things are here. But like Fiona, like, has a particular way. Let's say if I pack the bags, but I put like the towel on the right instead of the left, that would bug her, you know. And because she is so particular about it, I basically let her pack. But it ended up with her basically just packing our bags all the time. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? But
the point is, when you're two people living on one bike, you really have to like be quite organized with packing, because then that's the way you fit the most on. This is how I
think. But the towel can go right or left. Like, so like what I was finding is, so like Fiona,
the talc. You girls travel way different to the way I travel. Talc.
Like everything was so organized. So like for me, I kind of felt like I just wanted like to pack my own bags and strap them onto the bikes. But because we were traveling to Fiona was doing it, and it kind of felt a little bit ridiculous that throughout our trip, at least at that time, Fiona basically packed the bags every single day. Like it was a little bit like I never ever packed the bags, but I did like, I should be so lucky.
Did all the riding.
But I didn't like it, you know. I just kind of thought like, I just want to do my own bag, because, you know, it's very, very hot outside. It was like 35 plus degrees. And then Fiona's like kind of doing this by herself. And then it's a bit like, you know, you're just like stood there watching. It's kind of.
Yeah. I mean, that must be an art form in itself, that packing for two people on a bike, because most people overpack when it's just them.
Yeah.
How I take it there must have been about 12 different stages of packing before you got it refined to the fine art.
I think the pandemic helped with that a lot, because I think when we set off, it takes us a while. It takes us a while to realize that, like, you might want to downsize, but even if you make that decision, like, it's hard, like, to just suddenly send your stuff home. It's super expensive. I mean, from Colombia to send some stuff home, so you're more likely like, am I willing to throw this away or give this away, or am I just going to like keep it in case I need it? But for us, we left all our things in Colombia, and then we came here and we had absolutely nothing. And I mean, I didn't even have clothes or really, really nothing. And then I just bought like 2 T-shirts. I still do not have a pair of jeans. I mean, I haven't had a pair of jeans since we left Colombia. I just don't have it now, and I'm like, probably don't need it. And And yet we have so little things now that I think it allowed us to massively downsize.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, often I find that although when we were two up, we had like less stuff than some solo travelers, because we like put it down so much. But if you look at our pictures at the very beginning with a ukulele, I mean, there was a lot of stuff on that bike, so we
Sandra used to take responsibility for the ukulele. We literally were sleeping in Mexico, and in the middle of the night, she wakes up and goes, "Can we buy a ukulele?" And I was like, neither of us know how to play it. Why would we buy a ukulele? But within that week, we bought a ukulele.
You got a ukulele.
Play it.
And then we realized, we need a hard case. It's actually very heavy in the end with the hard case, But we had a lot of stuff. So we were, I think it was easier for us to downsize because we kind of started from zero again,
Yeah.
Well, that leads me on to a question that was going through my head there. Everyone has an item that they left to start the trip with, but as it turns out, it's probably the most useless thing that they actually ever packed. Like they never, ever, ever used it. Mine was like a full toolkit. There was just no point in me having it.
We didn't leave with one.
We didn't
nothing at all.
So you mean an item that we took but we never used?
Yeah, like what was the most pointless thing that you took on that first trip all the way down to Colombia?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And we're the hosts of the Where Our Minds Wander podcast.
We love spooky places,
morbid tales,
and unsolved mysteries. Throw in some weird science, cryptids,
and ancient legends.
And you have entered Where Our Minds Wander.
Join us each week as we delve into fascinating true stories from the supernatural
to the naturally weird. Get your favorite beverage, settle into your comfy chair, and journey with us to Where Our Minds Wander.
Listen and subscribe to Where Our Minds Wander on all your favorite podcast listening platforms.
Well, I guess it was, the ukulele was a little bit crazy, wasn't it? Because I tell you what, we used it so rarely. When we used it, when we were at the beach, we were at the beach very rarely. And then it's like, I want to walk down the beach with this ukulele, but we never really used it. And we could only ever play 3 tunes, with like 4 chords. And it was completely pointless because I guess if you were like a musician or you had a real passion, or at least you picked this thing up every day and it gave you some pleasure. But there were like, we used it a handful of times and we carried it all the way down there, I think.
Yeah.
I'll go with the ukulele.
I don't know what we packed otherwise that we definitely didn't use.
Fiona also has a very big pharmacy that she travels with.
Yeah.
And for me, like,
that's not useless.
You know what? I don't know. Like, I think it's good, fine to have like a plaster or like some basic things. But Fiona, number one, she has a pharmacy, literally.
Not a pharmacy.
I call it the pharmacy. And the second thing is, and this I really disagree with, like, like if you need like a deodorant, you need one deodorant, right? But what she'll do is she wants 2 of everything. So when one thing runs out, she has the next one. But she then always carries everything double, which is then completely crazy. It's like you need 1 toothpaste and 1 soap.
This is definitely what I did at the start. I think like at the start, I've always been naturally more organized. But I've always been more of a planner more than anything. And then when we first started the trip, I had to learn how to just to stop, like kind of just be more relaxed, to not have a plan and like kind of go with the flow a bit more, be more flexible in that sense. And at the very start, the idea of not knowing where we were sleeping for the night was hugely stressful for me. And like, and this obviously translated to with how I packed. So I would have like a spare of this and a spare of that. Even though, of course, you can always buy these things without a doubt on the road.
They have shops, don't they? They have shops in countries around the world.
And eventually I started like to relax into it. And actually, I now enjoy not actually knowing where we're staying for the night. And when people actually say, and it's like 3-4 p.m., it's like, where are you staying for the night? And we're like, we don't know. It doesn't give I'm not stressed at this point. I'm just like, we don't know. And this is just how it is. So I guess I had to just like learn to like wind down a little.
I was going to say, how do you think your travels have changed you? I mean, do you think, is that the main thing that's changed you then, Fiona? It's just
for me, Yeah, probably like definitely had to learn how to just relax and just like adapt to be more flexible, because I was definitely someone who liked to plan. I mean, I still like a plan, but I'm also very I'm a little strange. I'm like one end or the other. I either really like a plan or I'm super spontaneous.
Gotcha.
So yeah,
but if she wants a plan, she wants a plan. Yeah. It's a proper plan.
Yeah,
that speaks the voice of experience, eh, Sandra? What about you, Sandra? How do you think you've changed then?
You know, because I've always traveled so much, even before we left on this trip, and obviously traveling, you know, I think makes you so much more open-minded and a lot of other things. But I think for me on this trip, or since we've been traveling together, I think I really, really appreciate, I mean, we happen to be on a motorbike, which is like this sort of overlanding in general. I feel like you experience the country like in a different way, because when you go backpacking, you almost go from one tourist hotspot to another, don't you? You just want to see it all. And then on the way from one place to another, obviously you might go through some small villages and whatever, and then you sort of get little glimpses of other things. But if you're constantly just overlanding, and yes, of course, we still might go to like some, tourist attractions, like go to Tikal and see the pyramids and do some other things. But the majority of the time, you are never in these tourist hotspots, And in actual fact now, like I remember we were in Mexico, we were just so grateful, like we had such a nice time there. And then we got to Yucatan, which is like for the majority of people going to Yucatan, it's like that's Mexico for them, like this like encompasses everything. You can see the Mayan temples, you've got like the turquoise water and white sand beaches, you've got the cenotes, that's Mexico. We got there and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I wanted to get away from it. It was so busy. I mean, we still liked the cenotes and we saw a few nice places, but it was amazing to think that like before we were traveling the way we are now, I would have probably done this. I would have gone to Yucatan, I would have backpacked around, and I would have really, really enjoyed like my Mexico experience, Whereas that was our least favorite part of Mexico, because there was just like so much beauty in other regions that we really loved. And I think, so like in the way it changed me, it's like that rather than going from like one tourist hotspot to another, like 90% of the time you're not in touristy areas and you are just really, really experiencing like the genuine local life, of wherever you are at. And I think that's really precious, and I really appreciate that. And I couldn't go back just to like backpacking the way I was before, I mean, I could imagine suddenly maybe, I don't know, switching for a van and doing a bit of van life with a couple of dirt bikes on the back. I could imagine that. But like just like overlanding in general, I think I love that form of travel now so much.
Yeah, like normal touristy travel, when you, not so much backpacking, but like, when you fly in and then you get transport to your hotel or your villa or something, it feels very sterile.
I have to say, I've never done that actually.
Have you not?
No, I've only ever backpacked. So,
right.
But even compared to backpacking, I think it's so much more rewarding, to do overlanding.
See, I didn't do the backpacking side of it, so I've got no idea about that. But yeah, overland for me, as you said, you live it, you breathe it, you smell it, you taste it, don't you? And as you move through the country, you see how people change and the environment changes, the smells and sights and everything changes. I love that way of travel. And on the bike, it's brilliant because you're totally exposed to it all, aren't you?
Yeah, really freedom.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right, next one. Mark Fulcher. Justin, thank you very much for your question, pal. Mark Fulcher. Right, Mark is from up north, so bear with me. He types like he talks. So, help me, ducks. Looks like I was early to the party. So a couple of questions for you all. One, nice to see some adventure riders not jumping on the tractor GS. Well, you did start on a GS, didn't you? The 800. Yeah. What was it about the Tigers that made them more appealing for your requirements? So this is us jumping forward now to, you're now both riding Triumph Tigers, aren't you?
Yeah. Yes. Okay, I will be very honest in that I'm not very experienced with adventure bikes. The GS was our very, very first adventure bike. And we looked into some reviews. I was thinking, maybe the Honda Africa Twin, because it was like a little bit cheaper, or also had good reviews, and then the GS. And then we got the GS. And for me personally, that particular GS that we bought was very, very heavily customized. And at the time, I didn't think I'd need all of that, all of the crash bars, and it had like the Scott steering dampener, and I mean, everything that you could possibly customize was customized on that bike. And a lot of the things that were great I couldn't appreciate because I didn't really know how to appreciate them, because I'd never had the stock bike. And then there was a bunch of them that I didn't really want to have, but then once they're on there, you can't really get rid of them.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I really didn't like, which doesn't have anything to do with the GS bike itself, but just the way it was customized, it just had the heaviest parts. So like, the skid plate was from Black Dog Cycle. I mean, it's probably one of the heaviest you can get.
Heavy duty,
panniers, they were the Jesse pannier bags. I mean, they are solid, they're waterproof, but oh my God, they're so heavy. And so, and then like personally, I didn't like the steering dampener, so like there were a bunch of things on the bike that made it much heavier than it had to be. And the customizations weren't all to my liking. And obviously the Tiger 900 is lighter. And for me, the main difference was just, it felt so light to me, I remember I rode it for the first.
She said it immediately.
I mean,
she felt like it was lighter.
I just felt like it was like so much lighter, and I never had a triple engine before. Again, I've got very little experience with bikes. I mean, I've now ridden a few different bikes, but at the time it was just like the naked bike, the GS, and then the Tiger 900 in comparison. I mean, personally, if it nothing to do with the actual bike, but I just prefer the looks. Like I've never been a big fan of the GS sort of headlights. People love it, and I know they do. I've never really particularly liked it. But I think what it is the GS is like, it looks a little bit like a rugby player, It's a little bit, it is kind of an intimidating bike, but with the Tiger, I mean, it's got a very slim profile, it's more powerful, it's lighter, it's got like this slim profile. But for me personally, I didn't miss the old bike, but of course you cannot take a GS from 2013 and compare it with a brand new bike, because I mean, that wouldn't be fair. I would have to take the new GS that has come out to, draw like a really fair comparison. And I ever only rode it for 5 minutes. So I'm sure if we would have ridden it too, we would have enjoyed it, It's
That sounds like a nice little marketing ploy then for BMW UK. Come on, drop them a line. F850 GS, come on, head to head with the Tiger 900.
Have you had a go with it?
Yeah, I've ridden the F800 and the F850. Yeah, I own the 1250. I've had a 1200 and the 1250, and I've got to say, I didn't like the 800s and the 850s. I didn't like the inline 4 engine, and they don't ride like a GS. They don't have the telelever suspension. They've not got the boxer engine. It just felt totally alien to me. It didn't have the grunt that the boxer engine I'm used to, like the low end torque and power, and it just didn't have it. So I don't know. I instantly just felt, oh, this isn't a GS. This, why is it called a GS? This isn't a GS. When I got on it, but I've not ridden the new 900 Triumph. I've ridden the 8. And again, that was a nice little bike. It's good for town, for commuting into London. I
will tell you something. So I sat on my friend's bike. She did a round the world trip on the 800. Mm-hmm. And I had never been on a Tiger before. I tried the 900, and I sat on a bike, and I went just like getting it upright. And I was like, oh my gosh, it is so much heavier. The old generation Tigers are so much heavier than the new generation ones. Yeah. And I wouldn't have liked it, the old 800. I mean, it's so top heavy. Mm-hmm. And I think Yeah, I didn't actually ride it properly, so again, I can't comment on it. But it was so heavy, so top heavy compared to the 900. That did you like the Tiger 800 better than you like the GS 800?
I did, yeah. I preferred the Triumph to the F800 and the 850. To be honest with you, I really didn't gel with the smaller GSs.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
And I owned a 1200 Tiger before I bought the big GS. Wow. And exactly what you just said, it felt really top heavy, really, because when I jumped on the 1200 GS, all the weight's down the bottom because of the big boxer engine. And to me, it was like, God, this thing is so flickable. It's awesome.
Yes.
But I've heard the new 1200 Tiger, I've heard is much lighter and much more maneuverable. So that'd be interesting to try that one.
Yeah.
For sure. Right. Mark has another question. He says, I'm currently on a bit of a health kick and diet to shed some timber off my ever-expanding rope. However, I find myself craving all the naughty treats. What's your go-to little treat or snack that just fulfills that devilish craving inside?
I don't snack, believe it or not. I don't.
Do you not?
Sandra is the strangest human being. And
German, self-discipline, isn't it?
I know, but I don't like it. I snack on carrots. Carrots are a real snack for me. So like Fiona will answer this question.
You're a rabbit. What?
Yeah, Sandra doesn't snack. It's the strangest thing. I grew up and like really within my household, with my family household, even with my nephews and nieces, it's snack time is a legitimate hour. Like it's like, oh, it's snack time now, and everyone has some sort of snack. And
it's everything in between meals, isn't it?
And for me, I am terrible. I definitely lean towards junk food, so I would be on like crisps, chocolate, everything.
Actually, crisps.
You're on your carrots.
And then she's snacking on carrots. So it's quite funny. On one side of the panniers, I always have to have a snack packed somewhere. And so I'll have like crisps, multiple snacks, like crisps, like sweets, chocolate, or something like this. And because I'm snacking, Sandra started to snack, and she's got raw carrots. So if you're trying to save the waistline or like having a healthier
snack, that's not why I'm doing it. I just like them.
No, but this is why he wants a healthier snack.
Oh yeah, well then
raw carrot would be good, but just be careful not to chip your tooth like Sandra has done with it.
What, on a carrot?
Do you know, I chipped my tooth on the carrot, and then I went to the dentist, and it was during lockdown, wasn't it? And you know, the waiting line for the NHS dentist was so long that I thought, just go and see the private dentist, you know. So I made an appointment, you know, after thinking, shall I not? And I thought he's going to just have to like fix my chipped tooth. And then he's like, you've got 4 chipped teeth and it's going to cost you £600. And I never got it done. I was like, what the hell? But anyway, the waiting lines are gone now. So I've got an appointment next week. I'll get it sorted.
Have to think about it. A carrot could be an expensive snack.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And then you're munching on your crisps and chocolate. Teeth are perfect. No worries. Beautiful. It's your penance for eating carrots. I like that. There's a yin and yang between you two. You balance each other out, don't you? Sandra's on the gin and tonic, but has carrots. You don't drink, but you eat all the junk food. Happy days. Good. Right. Do you mind if I jump to a quick sponsor shout out?
Please go ahead.
Lovely job. We've got to pay the bills. Right. Okay. Folks, we are sponsored by, you've heard all of this before. So first one I'm going to read out is the Influencer Store. So the Influencer Store helps you build your brand, big or small, providing you with a solution and apparel. We help you to increase your fan base while supporting you with starting your own influencer clothing line with nothing more than just an idea or design, and there are no hidden costs. For more info, come check us out at theinfluencerstore.co.uk or drop us an email at online@influencerstore.co.uk for more information. Folks, if you've bought any of my merch over at TeapotOne.com, then all of that is handled by the Influencer Store. If you are thinking of starting up a merch line or anything like that, drop these folks a line and they can sort you out. They can host your website, they can design the website, If you've got a website already, then they can handle the sort of the online store side of things. Just drop them a line. If you're listening to the podcast, check out the show notes. If you're watching the YouTube vid, have a look at the description and there'll be links there. We're also sponsored by Ultimate Add-ons. Now, if you watch any of my bike reviews, you will see the phone holder that I use for the Kalimoto app, my sat nav that I use. That is an Ultimate Add-ons phone holder. They do loads of different phone cases for all different types of phone, and they also do a variety of different mounts that allow you to connect them to motorbikes, push bikes, quads, all sorts of different things. They pretty much cover everything. They're dustproof, they're shockproof, they're weatherproof, waterproof. You can use the phone normally, make calls with it. You can even use the camera on it as well, all whilst it's within that tough case. I use the Helix strap mount. Now, that's the only one which I'm going to put my name to because that's the one I've used for the last almost 5 years. And I've never had an issue with vibration. I know some mounts can affect the camera. Mm-hmm. I've never had that with a Helix strap. I had it once when I used a new prototype of theirs, and I've gone back to using the Helix strap mount. That is the one to use. So if you head to ultimateaddons.com, use the code TeapotOne with the number 10, you'll get 10% off. Right. Sorry about that, ladies. I am back.
Welcome back.
Hi. Right. Cheers for that, Mark. Thanks for your question. Debbie Clegg. Hi, Sandra and Fiona. I have a Lord KTM 790, which I'm currently in a long-term relationship with. Anywho, it was a revelation to find a lighter weight, bigger bike for me, as I have a few health issues. How do you find the weight management on the Tigers you have? And how much difference in clearance for the adventuring does the lowered bike make in doable terrain? Have a blast. So...
But it's quite interesting because obviously I have a lot more ground clearance than Fiona. And I always have had, because even the 800 GS has a lot of ground clearance, and I've always said a lot in terms of weight. Like I said, I mean it's lighter, and I sort of find it much easier to maneuver. We have thought about whether or not we wanted lighter bikes. Mm-hmm. And I have to say that I don't think you necessarily need a bigger bike than sort of a middle-sized adventure bike. Yeah. There are obviously benefits for having lighter bikes. In my case, if I'm really honest, I can't pick up my own bike, and I don't think that you should ride a bike that you can't pick up yourself. And if Fiona wasn't in the picture, I would have downsized personally. But we are always riding together, and so I pick up the bike. I mean, it's on. But
to be fair, Sandra doesn't really drop the bike. It's me who drops the bike.
I drop it very rarely, only because I don't push myself to the limit. So I also, because of my injury to my pelvis and also previous issues I have with my ligaments and with my meniscus, I do have a bunch of injuries, and so I feel like I really don't want to come off the bike. Whereas Fiona will just like crash off the time and come off and just like jump back on again. I'm a bit more scared, so I'm much slower than Fiona. I take my time. I don't push myself to the limits.
But in terms of like the ground clearance difference, there is probably, I think, was it 15 centimeters?
15 centimeters.
Roughly. Wow. We did actually do like a review on it, and I did actually state exactly what the difference was. But to be fair, I think yours is raised slightly higher than the original Tiger 900 Rally Pro, and mine has been lowered like 7 centimeters all in all, in terms of like the seat, the suspension and everything like this. For me, the ground clearance is enough. Like as a beginner rider, I 100% wanted my feet touching the ground. So I maybe in time with like more experience and confidence that I will be able to ride with even more ground clearance, so less lowered.
But I think just to butt in there, just to quantify it a little bit, folks, if you haven't been following what the ladies have been up to since they got back after Colombia since Fiona passed her test, I mean, you're not shying away from doing the off-road stuff. You're constantly out in the dirt and out in the gravel and enjoying yourself. So it's not like you're toddling along the road on tarmac. They are pretty much going for it here.
Yeah. So I love on-road riding and twisties, and I love like off-road riding as well. If you ask me to pick between the two, I still don't know yet. Like both of them do still give me like a thrill in different ways. In terms of clearance, I've never really had too much of an issue. I mean, I've scraped the foot pegs a couple of times going around like twisties, but that's obviously easily done because of the ground clearance, because it has been lowered. But you've never had any of this stuff because
no, I mean
have issues
because the ground clearance is so
much more.
Yeah.
But you've ridden my lowered bike actually.
I haven't scraped the foot pegs.
That's a badge of honor. That's good. Getting the pegs down.
I will be very honest. I can't keep up in twisties with her, and I can't keep up off-road with her. And I've been riding for a long time, but I'm kind of, I don't know. I take it like slowly. Ideally, I don't want to come off the bike. I know I might, but Fiona just really goes for it. It's kind of
I think it would be. Yeah, I don't know. It's just my personality, I guess.
Have you had an accident? Yeah, I don't mean this nastily, Fiona. It's just that I used to ride so much quicker until I had a proper big. I've had a lot of accidents over the years, but when I got T-boned, that was the first time someone had properly pulled out in front of me, and there's nothing you can do about it. Bang, it's happening. And that really did slow me down massively. I don't think I've ever been the same in my riding since.
And I can completely understand that. And I definitely think that that's why Sandra definitely rides how she does. And I can understand how that accident of yours would have slowed you down. I mean, touch wood, I've not had an accident. I mean, I've come off the bike plenty of times, but I've never been involved in an accident where someone else was. Actually, no, I was involved with an accident with someone else, apart from I wasn't actually riding. I was just sat on the bike still. And this was before I had my license.
That was such a sad case. Do you know, she didn't have a license yet. And we'd gone to do some motocross, which she didn't need a license to ride. And we had these little gas bikes.
It was the second time I was ever on a motorbike.
And the bike was, Fiona was stood there with one trainer to the right, another trainer to the left. And within the group, there was a woman that wanted to ride her boyfriend's KTM that she'd never been on, lost control and went straight into Fiona's leg, never apologized for it. And afterwards, she refused to apologize because she said, if you come to an off-road training, this kind of stuff is expected.
All the time,
It was like I was gobsmacked. So anyway, that was an accident, but not like stationary.
That was an accident, but I was stationary. So I actually had a hairline fracture from this. So I continued doing the training because
with a hairline fracture as you do,
because I didn't realize for a start, I had a hairline fracture, but I kind of like managed to stand on my 2 feet. I wriggled my toes. I diagnosed myself as Dr. Cheng and was like, oh yeah, there's nothing broken, it's okay. And I carried on, apart from the pain got worse, so then I stopped. But ultimately I haven't had a big accident. I hopefully will never be in one, but I am a bit more of an adrenaline junkie naturally, so I would just kind of like go for it in that sense.
It's such a buzz, isn't it? Like biking is just, I think for those that get bitten by the bug, your life's never the same, is it? It's like once, I can't imagine what it's like to go from pillion to riding for yourself, because I just jumped straight on riding, and after riding for a while, I became a pillion once or twice and hated it. I hated being pillion.
It's the worst. I cannot stand it.
Being out of control. Oh.
I tried to ride pillion to Fiona, and then I asked her to pull over.
She got off after like 1 minute.
I was like, this is not for me. I really, really do not like this.
A lot of people said this actually, because I was pillion, and so many people, whenever they saw me on the back, they were just like, oh, just wait until you get your license. You'll never go on the back of the bike again. But I genuinely really love being the pillion.
Well, it's scary. Yeah, she likes adrenaline.
I really do. I mean, I loved it then. And every now and then I jump on the back of the bike still. And I still really enjoy it. Like sometimes I do miss it. Of course, I love riding my own bike. Like it gives you a different sort of thrill, I think, for sure. But I still love being on the back of the bike. I don't have a problem with just like jumping on the back and just riding.
Yeah, I know people exactly the same as you. Like And some actually prefer being on the back than riding. And I can't get my head around it. Cannot get my head around it.
I can't.
Right, next one. Thank you for that, Debbie. Next one, Charlie Callard. How you doing, Charlie? Evening all. Podcasts are coming thick and fast now, mate. Love it. Cheers, Charlie. Thanks, pal. So your Instagram is astounding. The places you've been and pics you've taken are amazing. But what has been the most memorable moment of your travels so far?
Ooh. We rode there, but it's not directly linked to motorbiking, but we rode to Guatemala and we were told to hike this volcano because apparently you would be able to see lava at night. I mean, there's a million volcanoes all across Central America, but that one in particular, everyone was telling us you can't go through Antigua and not hike this volcano called Acatenango.
But we weren't considering it because we're not very fit. So.
We're not very fit, and I mean it was a steep 5-hour hike up. And at the time we were traveling with our friend Tracy, who we met at the border of Belize and Guatemala. And I mean, none of us is kind of fit, and we never meant to travel together, but we sort of stuck together and encouraged us to sort of take on this volcano hike. Yeah. And it was really funny because we'd only just met.
Yeah.
And then we decided to hike up this volcano together. And it's actually really, really cold at night. And then we all met and we realized we had the same 3.0 climb underlayers. Although we'd never met, the same color, the same, so we looked like looked like from the same family or something. Yeah, it was really funny. And so we finally got to the base camp. It was it was stunning views all the way up. But what I didn't realize is, I see the volcano exploding and it kind of ash is coming out of it. And it's only at night that you can actually see the lava. So as soon as the sun set, it was like this perfect lava show all night long and unrestricted view. So what you do is you don't actually hike the volcano that keeps exploding, but you hike the volcano next to it. So you're directly on eye level with the volcano. And it's just like, I have traveled so much. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And you're guaranteed to see that if you hike up this volcano. It's not that we got lucky. It exploded every 10 minutes. So we just had that perfect lava show. And I mean, the sound of the volcano, it's insane. And then
we didn't sleep.
And then to see like the lava spewing out, I mean, it's just, I never thought I'd see anything like it. And that's something that, it's
definitely a highlight.
Yeah, out of all my travels and all my life, is like really, really a huge highlight.
Bear in mind, you stood on a volcano. Not at any point did you think, "Oh, hello, is this one rumbling? What's going on here?"
I tell you what, it's a bit sad, but it was, the day after what happened in New Zealand with that volcano hike. Do you remember?
Yeah.
There was But what I will say is, we were on the volcano that was dormant, overlooking the volcano that, kept exploding. But I will say there were people actually hiking the volcano that was exploding.
No.
So we saw the lava stop around here, and then there were people here.
Night we saw the headlights.
I mean, I couldn't believe why on earth you would do that when actually I'm sure we had a better view than them, because all I was thinking is I guess they can feel the vibration, and you're so much closer to it, but that's just seemed crazy to us. But no, was our volcano dormant? Or I don't know if it was, but it wasn't. There's no lava on the volcano we were on, so.
It's not really a question you want to hear when you're stood on it. Is this one dormant?
Yeah. No, because we had another situation in Nicaragua where we also hiked a volcano, and they were like, touch. And the soil, the stones were boiling hot because it was an active volcano. I said, that one, very, very hot, this one.
Yeah. You didn't tell me this when I signed up.
Oh, dear, yeah.
Right. Cheers for that one, Charlie. Next one, Biker España. Just a couple of questions. On your travels, which place have you enjoyed the most and which place are you looking forward to visiting? Okay, well, we kind of touched on the one you've enjoyed the most, haven't we?
Yeah. Okay, and to be honest with you, this experience aside that I just mentioned, Guatemala was actually one of the countries that we enjoyed the most because, I mean, the roads, they were just amazing. So many beautiful, twisty roads.
Yeah.
and off-road, really challenging off-road, a lot of natural beauty. You've got the Mayan temples of Tikal, you've got stunning mountains and beautiful nature all around. You've got stunning lakes surrounded by volcanoes that are just so scenic and beautiful.
Oh, wow.
You also have the only vineyard in Central America.
There we go.
That we went to. That was quite interesting.
Did you make friends with the owner of that one as well?
No, it was quite funny because, like I said, it was the only vineyard in Central America. But when we turned up, we realized they hadn't actually produced any wine for 10 years. And they were about to run out of the wine that they had. So I was like, we probably won't be able to stay for much longer. But anyway, it was interesting. The people were so kind. And it was actually one of the most scenic, because it's always going to be like some scenic roads and some less scenic roads. But in Guatemala, everywhere was just like, everywhere we looked, it was so panoramic, so scenic. And I don't know, I've got like the fondest memory of Guatemala, I think.
And I think if I was riding, I would 100% say the same thing, though I definitely enjoyed Guatemala and stuff like this. But if I had to say one of my favorite times, I'm a little bit biased because I've only been on the bike in, Spain and Portugal, really. And I've got to say that I really enjoyed Spain way more than I realized because of all the riding.
We did a lot of off-road riding, and I was amazed how much and how amazing the off-road was in Spain.
But the one that I'm personally looking forward to is when we go down to like South Africa. For sure.
So for me, I'm always, because like my number one passion, I mean, I love riding the motorbike, but it is to travel, and I will naturally, my highlight will be where I haven't been. And I have been to Africa before. I'm still looking forward to it. And I'm also really looking forward to going back to South America, because we stopped in Colombia. We were by now we would have gone to Patagonia, gone up to Brazil, shipped the bike to New Zealand. We never made it because we obviously ended up just traveling through Europe. But I think because, again, I haven't been in South America other than just Colombia, which we also couldn't explore properly. I'm really excited about going back to South America, and we're going to Africa this summer. So that's going to be a huge highlight too.
What's the route down through Africa then? Where are you going? What you doing?
So we are a little bit restricted, because you might know this, but if you have a UK passport, you can't go through Iran.
You can. It's just that it's very hard to get the visa.
I mean, it's expensive. You need a guide. It's very restrictive. It's a headache. So the other
you can? Sorry to interrupt. Do you know you can have I think you can have up to 3 passports, up to 3 British passports. Well, you could when I went to 212 to 214, it wasn't well known, but you were allowed up to 3 passports, and that
how do you get bases?
How do you justify that?
You just have to I can't remember. If you Google it, there is a specific part of the passport website that you have to contact, and I had to give like documented evidence. I had to say why I needed these passports. What was the reason?
What was the reason?
Well, the reason, the trade secret is not to say, well, it's so that I can get into Iran and America, or, like certain countries won't let you in if you've got a stamp from another country. And a lot of the Middle Eastern ones are like that. You can't say that. What you have to say is it's down to visas when you are traveling. So in a sense of, what used to happen when you booked into a hotel, you had to physically hand over your passport and they would keep it until you left. But obviously, as a traveler, you have to take your passport to an embassy and get it stamped up for a visa, don't you? So, well, certainly you used to have to do it all that way. So what they would allow is you to have up to 3 passports. So you could give a passport in to the hotel, they've got that, and then you've got your spare passport or your 2 spare passports to go off and get visas that will allow you to go on elsewhere. It's basically to do with business travel, effectively, back in the day, and they just hadn't updated things. So I had 2 passports. I had 2 valid UK passports whilst I was traveling.
And wait, did you go through Iran?
No, originally I was supposed to do all through the Middle Eastern countries after Africa, but when it went it all went a wee bit wrong in West Africa for me. So I ended up back in the UK for a while. And the whole of the Middle East had just gone peaked. It had all gone horrible out in Iraq and Afghan and everything. And I just thought, I kind of felt like I'd had a bit of a body swerve in West Africa. So I thought, I don't really want to chance it anymore. So I'll just avoid what was going on in the Middle East at the time. And I altered my route and I sort of went north. There, I missed out all the stands. I'd love to go back and do it, but I missed out all that. So yeah, I didn't do it.
And also traveling through Africa isn't as easy as it used to be. You used to be able to kind of go coast to coast, but now, Ethiopia and Sudan, you can't actually cross
Ethiopia, not Sudan.
Yeah, you can't cross the border there. So then normally, a few years ago, you used to be able just to drive up to Greece, get onto the ferry, go from Egypt, and you could drive all the way down to Cape Town, right? And then a little bit further up towards the west as far as possible. But then it's so expensive every time you ship the bike, in our case now 2 bikes, that you're going to think twice, obviously, about what you are going to do. So we've basically, it'd be great to see Egypt, but we realized that the most cost-effective way would be to ship our bikes from Rotterdam to Cape Town, do go up to Namibia, do a little bit of the west that we can, but then essentially come back on ourselves, go all the way up to Ethiopia, and then ship back out from Kenya again. So that seems to be at the moment the most cost-effective way, because if we take the ferry to Egypt, we then have to fly the bikes over Sudan, and it's just.
But of course, if anything changes, then our route will also change and stuff.
Absolutely. And, all that rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? But that's still a huge area that you're traveling through. I'm only doing South Africa, this, that, and that. But when you look on the map and it just looks easy, doesn't it? Yes. But then you take the UK and you put it in there and you're like, my God, this is a huge landmass. Yeah. Oh, no, awesome. So when does that happen?
So we are going back to Germany mid of May. We'll do some off-road training there. And then we're going to the travel event at Bru Tike in the Black Forest in Germany. And that will be the official start of a trip through Europe and the Balkans this summer. But because Fiona has this 3 months restriction,
get 90 days,
because of Brexit. Yeah. So there are some countries that doesn't apply to, which are Croatia and maybe
quite a few from Croatia down.
So if we spend a bit more time there, it won't go from Fiona's time, And then basically by the end of August or say September, we want to arrange for the shipping of the bikes to Africa. Yeah.
Awesome. So this 90-day then, that means wherever you are, you have to return to the UK. And then you
don't have to return to the UK. You're only allowed within the Schengen area 90 days, whether it's consecutively or not, out of every 180 days. Wow. And they essentially backdate it. So if you fly in or once you leave, they backdate it to the 180 days. And if you've been in more than 90 days, then obviously, I guess they give you a bit of a warning.
And actually,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, this is actually why we're here, because this winter we set off and the plan was to spend the whole winter in Morocco because we thought great off-road riding, it's going to be like an amazing winter.
Didn't make it.
And we wanted to take the ferry from France. And then as we got there, they announced that they were immediately cancelling all ferries and you could no longer go to
just
to
the
Morocco.
day before.
And so we thought, oh my gosh, but by that time it was way too cold to kind of try to go to Turkey or somewhere else. So by that time we said, okay, we can only go to Spain and Portugal because we already struggled leaving the Black Forest at -2 degrees and going through France. It was already very cold. So we went through Spain, had a great time in Spain. Then we went Portugal. And then Fiona ran out of her 90 days. Yeah. So then we had to fly back home. And just like a day after, they actually opened the borders to Morocco. So it was just really poor timing. But this is why we are here right now, is because Fiona needs to stay in the UK for, until we can leave in May. Yeah.
But I guess it wasn't too bad because we did have to have a few things done in the UK. I mean, we had to renew the passport and stuff like this. So,
it's not the end of the world, but really it's weird because obviously we left on this round the world trip and then we found ourselves back in Europe because Fiona went to her parents, I went to mine, until we sort of could travel again. And then we thought this was it, and we were traveling, and then we sort of Brexit really got in the way. And
Brexit and COVID, bit of a mix of them.
So we thought, okay, quick break, and then we go to Africa, and then when we're outside of Europe, we won't have these Brexit issues anymore.
But it'll just make it all the more sweeter when you're back finally on the road and living the dream again, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Right, nice one, Chris. Thanks for your question. Next one, Ollie. Are you ladies okay for time? Do you need a break at all? You all right for time?
No, everything okay.
Sure, right, cool.
Yeah.
Ollie Ray. Afternoon, all. How you doing, Ollie? Ladies, I've been a big fan of your journey so far and love seeing it unfold. Now your visas have expired. Where in the world are you heading to now? Well, we've kind of covered that, haven't we?
Yeah, we have.
Secondly, sorry, I don't pre-read the questions just so they're as much a surprise to me as you. Secondly, how many times did that tiger of Fiona's get dropped?
Oh my goodness.
I can't tell you how many times. Honestly, it's countless.
I tell you what's funny. When I've dropped my bike, it was always, not really. I mean, very rarely have I dropped it while I was actually riding it. It was almost like I lost balance and it fell to the side.
Or she was very tired and we dropped it like when we're at
But like the way Fiona comes off the bike, I mean, I've never come off like that. Like she'll be riding, and then by the time I get there, because I'm always behind her because, I'm trying to play catch up, the bike isn't facing in the direction of travel, but it'll be like on the side, up the hill or something. And I'm thinking, how on earth, like what must have happened for the bike to get into that position? I mean, they're pretty nasty bike drops.
Yeah, I mean, the first few have been quite, like, you probably would have seen on our social media. Like the first ones, it looked like it was quite funny. It looked like someone pushed me off the bike. Yeah. And it was really, essentially, I stalled the engine. If it wasn't so shocking. Most people probably wouldn't happen to, but obviously I was learning. So I got
honestly, you'd be surprised. So many people do that.
Okay.
Just stationary and drop the bike.
Yeah. It makes me feel better. But, but I mean, I passed my license in mid-August, and then I didn't ride until mid-November or in November. And I literally had my driving experience was that and jumping onto the 900. And it was quite like nerve-wracking, I guess, because... Wow.
Can I just say very quickly, her instructor at the time said she wanted an extra lesson before she jumped on the Tiger. So she just passed her license and she just did this enhanced ring course for a day just so she would get more riding time without the pressure because she'd already passed. And we told him the reason she wants this is because she's going on the Tiger 900 because we're spending winter in Morocco riding. He's like, "You're doing what?" And then he said, "I think you're crazy and you're going to break your neck."
Yeah.
And he said, so
that will instill your confidence, won't it?
Yeah. And then when he said that, I was really nervous.
Yeah, you were.
That made me like kind of second guess everything. But then I jumped on the bike and of course I loved it and stuff like this. So once I'm moving, I feel quite good about it. But I'd probably drop the bike probably 10 times. No, maybe.
Don't, honestly, I mean, I've crashed so many times. Don't worry about it. If you ride a bike, certainly if you're going to be riding off road and if you're going for it, then you will drop it. You will drop it. Happens, don't it?
I've definitely dropped it.
But we definitely had cases where, again, like I'm riding behind Fiona and suddenly the terrain gets really tough. And all I'm thinking, she wrote this? And like by this time, I'm walking it and I'm paddling I've got very long legs. So if I'm like uncomfortable, I mean, it's not great, but I can like sort of walk over some stuff, And I go, and I'm like, I can't believe she wrote this, and like quite impressive, really.
She's blessed with long legs, but
it's not a blessing because the thing is, I have that option. Fiona can't do that, so obviously she's going to
have to try and ride it. And if I can, then great, and if I can't, then I'm going to topple off, sort of thing.
Yeah. Whereas you can just put your feet down and go, nope, not doing this.
Yeah, but it's not a blessing, really. It's actually stops you from progressing.
Yeah. Ollie's got a second question. He says, finally, what is your must-have essential item whilst traveling? And I don't mean mobile or laptop.
Oh, my goodness.
That's a good question because I normally say mobile.
Yeah,
you would have said camera.
I would have said camera, and it didn't matter to me in which form it was, because I used to have a really nice SLR, and when we decided to start motor traveling, I said I'm not going to take it with. I know some people do, but I wasn't going to take it with me. And also these days the iPhones are really quite good if you're just posting on Instagram and.
Yeah.
But you can't pick a phone.
I can't pick a phone. But are we talking about essential or non-essential items? Because
essential.
Essential.
Well, like for you, I mean, an essential. I mean, what is you must have it with you. You don't go anywhere when you're traveling unless you have it. Apart from your phone and laptop and passport, obviously.
My answer is going to be probably very bad, but I always need a snack packed. And obviously it's not one specific, but my essential item is at least one snack.
Right. Gotcha. I was just going to say a carrot.
Not a carrot.
It's not that essential. Honestly, I really don't know, because like it's all. I mean, underwear is essential. I need my soap with me. I don't know.
You only need one pair. That's it. That'll do you. No problems. All right then. Okay, we'll let you off with that. Ollie says, "Take care. Look forward to seeing the next part of your adventure."
Thank you, Ollie.
Next one, 80 CJ5. How you doing? Ladies, you might not know this, but there is oh, here we go. They always have a pop at me. Ladies, you might not know this, but there was a man named Bru Smart who rode his J6R some places and made some videos. Cheers, 80. Thank you, pal. If I'm counting correctly, I am number 8 here, and I'm sure Bruce has not mentioned that he now has a GS. I have. Yeah, you're right, I have. My question to you all, being from California and having to deal with a crazy amount of traffic every day, is there a city or place that you've visited where you just wanted to keep the throttle open and get out of there as fast and straightforward as possible?
Well, this is
actually least favorite.
Do you know what? This sounds really bad, but I really have. You know, like the US has so many remote areas and open roads where you just like so much beauty and you don't see anyone. And then we did the Big Sur on Highway 1, and it was like one humongous traffic jam, but we couldn't even filter because there was proper, like the roads were properly blocked. And I just wanted to get out of there. I was like, we saw some beautiful...
It took away from there. Though.
Yeah, I mean, there was like McWay waterfalls and some very beautiful scenery, but it was really like the traffic really took away from it because if you go anywhere in Europe, it's everywhere like that, especially in summer. But if you're in the US and you can go through Utah and see so few cars and just see so many amazing things on the road, and if you're then in like California and it's like all like one big traffic jam, it's like, I wanted to get out of California.
Where were we? I think it was in Colombia, and we were trying to rush to get to Bogota.
Oh my God, that was the worst.
We got stuck in so much traffic. I don't even know where it was.
You know what?
We were
going from Cartagena, which is in the north, to Bogota, south. We were crossing all these mountains, and in my mind, I thought it would be very scenic because we follow a lot of other people that travel by motorbike, and everyone always has these really cool pictures of Colombia. We didn't see that. Like, it was just one humongous traffic jam, and it was hard to...
Yeah, it was. And we were so hot as well, but even though we're on a motorbike, we couldn't filter because literally the whole road was blocked, like lorries, cars, everything.
I mean, we did a little bit, but it was horrendous.
Yeah,
it was bad.
I think that was probably to do with COVID and people were trying to
I don't think it was COVID related, but it was
crazy. It was crazy.
It was the quickest road to Bogota, but it was like 3 days of just like traffic jam and
horrible
scenic roads.
Yeah,
I think the worst for me. There's 2 places that I had that just wall to wall traffic. One was Rome, and I was gutted because I really wanted to explore Rome, but by the time I got there, they just started to block off all the roads. But typical Italian, there was no common sense to it. They'd let you in and then start blocking. So you end up getting stuck. You know, you couldn't get out once you were in there. I ended up just going over the pavement and just going for it, getting through everybody. And the second one was, oh God, where was it? Jakarta. I have never in my life seen traffic like that. It was biblical. Everyone goes on about India, like when you ride or drive in India, they will say, wait till you get there. But I mean, there was no room in Jakarta. There was nothing moved. It was just gridlock. Like you'd even go up on the pavements. Like all the mopeds would go on the pavements, and they were full. So it was just everywhere was rammed, and it was about 95% humidity as well. It was horrible.
Wow. But that's something that they're probably used to, and we're not. So when it's more of a shock to the system.
Absolutely. I ended up staying with a local family for a night there, and they were saying that nobody walks because it is so humid. So they just get in the car. Even if they're going 100 meters up the road, they'll get in the car and drive, because even if they're sat there for an hour, they're in an air-conditioned environment. So nobody walks there. Oh, it was horrible. Lovely place, but just don't try and go by the road. Excuse me. 80's got a second question. Last time I asked about peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and I'm curious, do you guys like straight fries, curly fries, or cross-cut fries? Is there a favorite store to get said fries? And chips are things that are in bags like Doritos. Now, 80, this is a bit complicated. 80 brought up peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in one of his questions and got a tirade of abuse off of a load of people because he was basically saying it's only Americans that eat it. And we were like, no, we have.
I confirm that's not true.
I also have to say, I know this sounds shocking, but I don't care for fries.
What?
Yeah, I don't care for them.
She's a strange person.
I don't care for fried foods.
Fiona, what do you see now?
What do you see in this woman?
I don't know. But I can confirm that peanut butter and jelly sandwiches are not just an American thing. My dad eats it like basically nearly every morning.
Absolutely. Protein.
Yeah. Well, I don't personally eat it, but I cannot answer the best fries question, whether the straight, curly, crisscross fries. I love it all. If I could only eat one thing forever, it would be like anything made from potato. And
sweet potato fries. That's sweet potato.
But normal fries are better.
You think? Oh, I like sweet potato personally. I like that. So you're not a chip person, Sandra?
Yeah, no, not really.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you know?
Strange, isn't it?
What's your joy in life? No chips and carrots.
Do you know? I like oranges. I like fruit.
Fair enough.
I like dark chocolate. If it's a good quality dark, I would never have like a Snickers or a Mars bar. But if it's like a good quality of dark chocolate.
She likes adult dark chocolate.
I can enjoy that, yeah.
Grown-up snacks.
Yeah, grown-up snacks, yeah.
Wow. Cool. Good luck with that one, Fiona. Good luck.
More chips for me. It just means
I suppose so. Yeah, you're never going to eat each other's snacks then, are you?
I help her if she orders some fries, like she can't eat them all, I'll have a few. I would never order it, and I just don't care for it,
Right. Fair enough. Cheers for that one, 80. Next one, Pete English. Hi, ladies. Hope you're both fitting well. Question. One day you find yourself turning up at such a beautiful place that it completely takes your breath away, and you both end up calling it home. In your mind, where do you think that might be, and what would that place look like? That's a good question.
I've always said, to me, I really love having this nomadic lifestyle where we just sort of don't have actually a home. And I know this sounds crazy, but I could imagine to keep this going for whilst we're healthy and can do this, okay? Which is also crazy because some people do this 1 year trip or something, but then they want to come home to a base. But I don't have that feeling. But I have always said that if I find somewhere along my travels where I feel like, I could actually, maybe I'll fall in love with a place and I could call it home, So I've always been very open to that. And I have to say, maybe, I still don't want to actually have a base anywhere, but I really like Porto in Portugal. I could imagine, I don't want the big city life, but somewhere small and vibrant like that, I like the atmosphere there. I could imagine just having that as a base for when we are in Europe, for example.
It's very hard to answer this question because actually, whilst we travel, we do regularly say this. I was like, can you imagine like staying here or something like this, or like we'll have a quick look at like property.
I remember the first time I was in Cape Town, I fell in love with it, and I thought, my God, this place really has it all. You've got the mountains, you've got the beach, you've got all the vineyards that you want. But
there's a recurring theme here, isn't there? Vineyards.
I don't know why I'm on gin actually, but I mean, there's like politically and like other things going on that all come into play. If you would think like, would I generally, am I visiting or do I want to live here? So I don't know just yet, but I would say, I mean,
it wouldn't be a city.
Yeah, it definitely wouldn't be the city. It wouldn't also be like in the middle of the mountains. I'd like it to be maybe like surrounded by mountains is fine. I'm definitely not somebody who likes to sit on the beach all day, but I like to be near the beach, which is ironic because I don't like going into the sea. It's really weird. I used to surf, so like going to the sea to surf made sense to me. But if it's just like to cool off or to go for a swim, I don't see I don't have the desire to go into the sea. But I like to be by the sea. So what would that place look like if it was like by the sea, surrounded by mountains?
Cape Town.
Consider it. We're still looking for it. We're looking for it. We'll let you know if we find someone.
Hey, one place that really struck a chord with me was Japan. Absolutely loved
That's so
Japan.
High on our list.
Oh, it's just stunning. Just stunning. It's so traditional and so polite and so clean. And then, just the beauty of the place and the history and the culture, it's just nuts. You go and see temples, they're 3,000-4,000 years old. And they look almost, like they've just been built. It's incredible. What a place. Yeah. Loved it.
We can't wait till we get there.
Yeah, it's very, very high on our list.
Great place. Cheers for that, Pete. Next one, Louise Worsfold. Ladies, great to see some more female representation on here and those within the LGBT community. 2 questions for you. 1, if it's not too personal a question, right? I haven't pre-read these, so if you don't want to answer,
it's all right.
If it's not too personal a question, what's the most dangerous country you've been to where you were at risk due to your sexuality? That is something I was going to ask. Actually, have you felt uneasy at all at any point?
Okay, so first of all, I will say
it has nothing to do with the country.
No, I wasn't. Actually, I wasn't even going to say that right now. But we're not really like in your face same-sex couple. We're not like like we're quite like when we travel. I mean, we do. Obviously, we take care, right? So if we go to Myanmar, or when we went to Myanmar and we know that it's illegal, it's illegal, then we won't hold hands. And if we're in a country where we know this is okay, then we might do it. But overall, we're not really like so all over each other, that. We had one situation due to that, and only one so far. But before I say what happened, I just want to say
it's nothing to do with the country.
I've never told this story because I don't want it to reflect badly on the country, because the issue I had was with an expat who was living there. And I don't want to say it happened in this country and then we think that this country is not tolerant in that sense. But we were in Honduras. Yeah. And so I mentioned previously that we met our friend Tracy while we were traveling in Guatemala, and then we sort of went our separate ways. And then she told us that she was meeting her family in Honduras. And she said, "What are you up to?" And we said, "We don't know." And she said, "Do you want to join us?" And we just spent Christmas all together. And it was kind of really sweet because we were just by ourselves. And she sort of included us into like her family plans. And then we were in El Salvador at the time, I think, when we agreed, or perhaps we agreed that before, I don't remember, but we basically rode up to Honduras, and then we took a ferry out to the islands, and we were on Roatan Island, and she was was a really nice part of the islands where there was like a lot of nice restaurants and bars, right? It was like a posh.
It was actually quite touristy.
We didn't expect this, we thought like Honduras is going to be like authentic rundown, and
local,
Roatan Island. I mean, 5 cruise ships a day, all these fancy restaurants. I mean, I was like, how is this Honduras like? I honestly, I didn't expect it to be like that. And I was really, really shocked. It was also very expensive. But then she had, she had some connections on the island because she's been there many times. So she got us really nice and very cheap accommodation for the Christmas period, which is very sweet of her. And then there was this little jewelry.
No, I mean, let's say it was like very early in the morning and we decided that we would meet Tracy, but Tracy was living like maybe half an hour walk away or something. And she was you had to enter a private part of the beach to go to where she was living. But it's very early in the morning. We were probably holding hands on the beach, like just strolling. And it was what we thought seemed empty or next to empty. And there was a jewelry stand that was there, and there's this owner of this jewelry stand. And after going through the private beach and meeting Tracy, and we spent a bit of time there, we all eventually went back down to the beach. We had to go through the private bit and then the public bit. Mm-hmm. And then we lay down the towels, we're like sunbathing. Again, we're not like touchy-feely or anything. You would not be able to tell that we were a couple. Like, if anything, we would have just been friends at this point. And this man went up to Tracy and was really quite angry and told her to tell your friends to be gay elsewhere. And so him seeing us being in a same-sex relationship obviously offended him. And we were, Tracy was like horrified.
She was horrified, but she said, I'm really horrified, but this just happened. And she just recounted what happened.
So she said this to me, and then I relayed the information to Sandra.
Not immediately, because Fiona...
I don't like conflict. So.
I don't mind confrontation. So Fiona thought she's not going to tell me at first.
Right.
So then I tell her, tell Sandra like a little bit like later, maybe like 20 minutes later or something. And then I said, just so you know, like there's someone who said this. And the irony was he was wearing rainbow shorts.
Yeah, that was the funniest thing.
And anyways, he's gone up kayaking.
With a unicorn t-shirt.
Yeah, it was crazy. And he went up kayaking at this point, and he comes back. And then obviously Sandra spots him, and then Sandra can't keep it in her mouth.
No. I went up to him and I said,
politely.
Yeah, but I was very, actually that's what irritated him, is because I was really nice, and I said hello to him. And even walking up with a smile, I could feel like he was really annoyed at the fact that I had the cheek to, in his eyes, go up to him. Yeah. And he was there with his son. And he basically, I just said like, hi, how are you doing? And he was like, almost like, what do you want? And I said, Tracy said, that we made you feel uncomfortable. So I just wanted to come up and find out, what was happening. He's like, you don't make me feel uncomfortable. And I said, great, because I would hate to make anybody feel uncomfortable. Have a nice day. And then I walked back. And all I can hear is, nobody makes me feel uncomfortable on my island. And then he just like lost his shit.
And I'm like laying on the beach on the towel, and I'm like, oh God, what did she say? But
instead of coming back to me, he storms to Tracy and starts shouting at her, like, it was so aggressive in the distance. And I felt bad because I obviously wanted him to come back to me, if anything. And instead he was taking it all out on Tracy. And also, I was quite mindful. And I just want to say, before I went to him, I did say to Tracy, like, because she was essentially on a family holiday, and I didn't want to, I said, look, I would like to go up to him, but at the same time, this is like your family holiday. This might, I don't know, like,
you don't want to make a scene. Yeah.
And she said, if you feel the need to speak to him, you speak to him. You can do that, And I was like, okay, fine. But then it was really annoying that he had gone up and spoken to her.
And was really quite aggressive in like how he was speaking.
And then while this is happening, he had 2 very sweet children. And like one of the how old was this boy? Maybe
17.
He was 17. Okay. I mean, he was so sweet, this boy. And he comes up to me and he said, oh, please, do you mind moving? I just like it's just going to be easier. And I said, I can't move because your dad is homophobic. And if out of principle, I'm not going to move because I'm actually not on I wasn't on the private part of of the beach. And essentially he wanted me just to move away so I wasn't too close to the store, but I was really not close to it anyway. And I basically was explaining to him that his dad was homophobic, and out of principle, it's not because I want to like cause an issue, but it would be wrong of me to move because like I need to like stick up for myself, and I'm going to stay put. That really upset his mother. The mother came up to me and said, "How dare you use the word homophobic? He's only 17." She goes,
and I was like,
really?
And I said, "We've got another issue here." And then the mother goes, "Let's go like in the back."
The mum wanted to fight Sandra.
And I was really, do you know what? I don't mind confronting like a guy who looks like he was like a big guy, but a woman who's ready to fight scares the shit out of me. So I was
evil.
I was like, anyway, what happened in the end was he said, "Watch your back." And
then he threatened to kill the British bitch. Oh, am I allowed to say that?
Yeah,
sorry.
cool. You can say what you like.
And then, but the funny thing was, I was like, does he know which one of us is British because it's me? And I'm like, ugh.
And in the end, he basically said, "Watch your back." Yeah. But you know what he did is when, after all of this happened, I mean, people came to me and they said, really do need to watch your back. Like, as in, I honestly felt, and I said, as in dangerous walking home? They said, yes. And it really impacted how I sort of enjoyed myself. And we never stayed out until after, like, it was dark or anything. But immediately the next day after this happened, so our friend Tracy was staying there at a friend's place who had just like renovated this huge house that he was renting out on the private beach, and people who were staying at his place, they had like sun lounges that kind of were shared sun lounges for the people that lived on that part of the island. And he'd taken a knife and like slashed them all open. Like, so the next morning we arrived to that, and it was kind of, I was like, okay. And then it annoyed me because again, like, you know, I'd gone up to him, he shouted at Tracy, and then he slashed all the, you know, but he didn't come to me, he did that to them. And then I obviously felt bad. And anyway, the thing is, I mean,
okay in the end.
He was not from that country is all I'm going to say. So I don't want that to reflect on Honduras, because we actually had really lovely experiences in Honduras with the locals, as we did in.
I mean, we were lucky enough to actually hitchhike in Honduras, and that was actually okay.
Yeah, we did actually, on that island too. But that was the only time we ever had that experience. And then when we are in countries where we know it's like illegal or anything, then I mean, we're very respectful and mindful of that. I mean, not saying that we agree with the whole rules, but
obviously,
we're very, we're okay to just,
I mean, that's the sensible thing to do, isn't it? I was going to say, because places like, I remember traveling through Indonesia, and there's signs up in like motels and hostels and things when you go to, where they point blank say, unless you are married, like you couldn't even share a room with a woman. As a man, I couldn't share a room with a woman unless we were married, and you could prove it. And I remember when you guys were coming on, I remember thinking to myself, God, I mean, how does that work in these countries if you're a same-sex couple turning up and you need a room? I mean,
okay, I tell you what.
Do you have to get two separate? So?
I tell you what's really annoying, because we are two women. They always give us two single they always give us two single beds. Yeah. And then we say to them that we don't want the single bed, double. And then they find that really confusing, because they're always happy if they've got someone they can give these single beds to, right? Because most people don't want them. And that is annoying, because like
they get a bit confused. Yeah, they get the look of confusion. Like, why would they want a double bed?
And we had a lot of situations where we said if they didn't have a double bed, then we would leave. And then they said we don't have one. And then we were leaving, and then they said, okay, you can have it. You know, so they had it, but they just didn't want to give it. And that's something that we find pretty much everywhere. But I mean, also in Europe, right? I mean, I'm not talking about the other.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, in Spain all the time, it's like, here, two single beds, and it's like, no, we would like a double bed, and then like we don't have it, and then we leave, and then it's like, oh, okay, here, have room, so and so. But it's not that they mind us being, they just don't, because they generally think we're friends, and then they want to get rid of the two single bedrooms. You know, it's not meant in a homophobic way, I think. But that's the only thing that's then annoying, because we are like, we really want the double bed.
It's been quite funny, actually. A couple of times, I don't even know if they're doing it seriously, but they go, are you two sisters? And we're like, no.
The reason they say that is obviously want to know what the relationship is. So they come up with this ridiculous statement of, are you two sisters?
Like, no, I mean, we could be adopted sisters, but no part of us look like sisters.
But a lot of people have asked us this, and we're always like...
That's surprising to me in this day and age. But I mean, I suppose it's... Yeah, well, I'm surprised at that, especially in somewhere like Spain. I always found Spain quite easygoing and open, but I suppose I don't move.
The thing is, I genuinely believe that they did not know that we were a couple, right?
Okay.
So I don't think it bothered them. I just think they see two girls come in, and it's like we say a double room, and then they give us two singles, and then we come back and say, no, we want the double room. So I mean, I honestly don't think it's ever meant with
malice.
Yeah. It's just they want to keep the doubles for couples.
Yeah.
When husband and wife walks in.
Yeah, I get you. Cool. I'm glad you brought that up, Louise, because it was a question I was gonna raise anyway. So thank you very much for bringing that up. Hope you didn't mind answering that.
Not at all.
Next one, Louise has got a second question. Well, I think we kind of covered this. What's the one treat from home that you've had cravings for, and to what lengths have you gone to find it in whatever countries you're in?
So only Fiona can answer this, because I don't have cravings.
I crave it's going to sound very bad. So we like to have the local food when we're traveling, of course, and we truly enjoy it. But I think, I don't know what time frame, maybe like a month into Mexico or something like this, I was just so tired of having frijoles, these beans, next to every meal.
Refried beans.
So every breakfast, lunch and dinner. And I was just sick of seeing this bean next to it. Little did I know that you get it throughout Central America as well. But
I just want to say, after 10 days in Mexico, she said, I really don't care for these refried beans. And I was like, good luck.
yeah, exactly. You better get a taste for it.
I think for me, it's definitely always cravings for either home cooked food, like my mum's food, or just Western food. And I will pay a little bit extra to have even stuff like chips. I mean, it sounds really bad, but I love stuff like chips and junk food and stuff like this. So yeah. I'm the sucker abroad who will pay that extra money for it. Sometimes, not all the time.
I remember arriving into Panama, and I flew my bike from Medellin in Colombia. I flew it from there to Panama. So I stayed in a hostel in Panama City just for a couple of days, waiting for it to arrive and everything sort itself out. And I went for a wander in Panama City, and it's like America, isn't it? For me, it was just like arriving in America, because it was all the big main stores and fast food places. And I remember seeing a Subway, and I was just like, I haven't had a Subway in a year. Oh God. So I remember going in there and having this big going in and having this foot-long Subway and just thinking, this is the best thing ever. Loved it. Right. Are you okay if I just do another quick sponsor shout out?
Of course.
Lovely. Right. So we are also sponsored by Innov. Now, there's a big long blurb to read out, folks, but I read that out every week. So the score with Innov. They sponsor the main TeapotOne channel. They do motorcycle dash cams. So they've got the single camera, the C5 system. They've got dual camera systems, which are the K series. I don't think they do the K2 anymore, but they do the K3, which is 1080 front and rear, and the flagship K5. That's the one I've got on the tractor. So that's a 4K front, 1080 rear. Totally autonomous. You fit them, you forget them. As soon as you turn the engine on, they kick in, they start recording. They've got GPS sensors in them. So, if you get shunted, if there's an accident, if there's any sudden movement whilst you're on the bike, then it'll automatically lock that segment of footage. It just loop records through your SD card continuously. They've got GPS overlay. So you can, if you want, you can take the SD card out of the camera at the end of your ride, and then you can use some software to get a plot, like a Google Map plot of the route that you've done, if you want to do that. They've even got microphones in them. So, if you're like me and you talk rubbish on a camera, then you can motovlog as well if you want. And if you check out some of my vids on the TeapotOne channel, some of them are done purely with the Innov and the Innov onboard camera. Head to Innov, innov.co.uk, and if you use the code, I think it's Teapot, I think it's Teapot, Teapot. You'll get 5% off of any of the cameras on the website there. It really is worth doing. If you have an accident, the first thing your insurance is going to ask is there CCTV? And obviously, if we have one of these systems fitted, you can turn around and say yes. But remember, everything is on CCTV. Your GPS, the date, the time, your speed, it's all there. So it has calmed down my riding quite a lot. Well worth having, though. Right, I'm back, ladies. Sorry about that. Do you need a break at all? There's still a few more questions here.
No, okay.
Right, awesome. You've been very popular. There's still about another 4 questions to get through here. So, next one, Lee Vigor. How you doing, Lee? Hello to all. Hope you're well. Buddy. Now, Buddy is Lee's little dog. He goes everywhere with him on the bike. He's a little chihuahua. And he goes everywhere on the motorbike with Lee. Buddy has decided he wants to travel with you two, and I thought he loved me. Nice to see you're on the best bike in the world. He's a big Triumph fan, a massive Triumph fan. What's been your best experience and your worst experience so far?
Best and worst in terms of travel.
Just for you. It can be to do with the riding. It can be to do with the country, the people, and experience that you've done. Anything.
Okay, so I think a tricky one that I got myself into is we were in Nicaragua, and once we both in one, best and worst. Yeah, best. Actually, it is best and worst a little bit, but we were in Nicaragua and we got to Leon, which is like this beautiful post-colonial city. It's really stunning, like beautiful architecture, all these colorful houses. Did you stop in Leon at all when you traveled?
No. Did I?
In Nicaragua? You'd know.
No, I don't think I did. No, I didn't. No.
So beautiful. And, the beach is nearby and there's lots of like little things you can do nearby. But one of the things that everyone who goes through Leon tends to do is to go volcano boarding on Cerro Negro. It's one of the youngest active volcanoes it's actually the one where I told you where it was hot when we were walking on it. But basically, everyone is like sort of does this. I think the speed record is somewhere around 60 miles an hour. So you get these boards and then you go down it. Wow. And it was really funny because there's tours all over town and they'll take you to this volcano and then you go up. It only takes about 45 minutes to hike up. But the idea is like you just carry your board up and then you go down. Yeah. And the thing is, I wanted to, I was looking into it. And I saw just some pictures of the scenery, and it was very different from all the other volcanoes we'd seen because it had this like really black, dark ash. It's like sand and stones, and it was surrounded by this green, lush rainforest. So the contrast was just like insane. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, like it looks so incredible. And I really wanted to go there just for the landscape. And then there was this activity of volcano boarding. But Fiona here is a real adrenaline junkie. So she was like, that won't excite me just to go down on this board.
Let me just explain myself a little bit. We just hiked up like one of those the volcano that we were telling you about in Guatemala.
We were still recovering from muscle pain
still recovering because we were incredibly unfit. And so then she goes, let's hike up this one. And the idea of hiking up something at that moment was like, no. And it was so hard. And I was like, I'm not sure how much of a thrill this sandboarding will give me anyway. So I initially said no.
So she said no. And I thought, you know what, I'll go by myself because I also knew that to get there was a bit of sand riding, which I'm terrified of, and I'm still really terrified of it now. I thought, you know what, if I'm by myself without a pillion, I can just like power through, and maybe like it'll be like a really good practice to like learn how to ride in sand. And so like the people behind the reception in the hotel we stayed in, we were just asking for some advice about getting up there, and they were kind of horrified that we wanted to go there too up on this bike, because by the way, Fiona at some point changed her mind. So first I was just trying to figure out how to get there. And everyone was like, don't go there in this big heavy bike, it's like it's very sandy, and there is all these different roads, and you're just going to get lost, there is no like it's not like a fixed it's not marked, you're just going to get lost. And it can be, they said it can be dangerous because the only people who go there are these tours, that take people to do the sandboarding, but there is no one else. So if you don't get back in time, like you can, like there's nothing out there, right? But I was like, okay, I'm still going by myself. And then Fiona Like the more she heard about like the conditions over there, she was a bit like...
I heard that there was sand there, I was like, well, I'm going to need to go, because if you drop the bike, you're not
pick the bike up.
But obviously it was scarier with Fiona, because like I'm already terrified of sand riding and I have to go with Fiona.
And now you've got a pillion as well.
And then we met this one guy, and he said actually the most positive thing to us. He said, you know, it's not marked, but somehow, whichever way you take, they all lead to Cerro Negro volcano. I didn't know how that made any sense, but I'm like, okay, that's good enough. And he said, just leave very early in the morning and come back before the tours, because if anything happens out there, like no one's going to help you. And so like we went out there, and like in the beginning, I remember when it first started, and I was like riding on sand, and I was like, oh, this is okay, I can do this. But like it got sandier and sandier, like the more we went into it. And I mean, I handled it very badly, because like there was, you know, you probably know this experience when you're doing some crazy off-road on the other side of the world, and then someone comes by on a little scooter.
Oh, no, yeah. 3 up or 4 up. Yeah. So with a fridge on the back as well.
Yeah. What happened is that I mean, it sounds crazy, but I would go about 100 meters and then stop, and I would just like be drenched in sweat, and I would just like need a breather, right? And then like build up the courage again, and then go again. But something that should have been maybe 40 minutes of solid off-road riding on sand took me two or two and a half hours. 2 hours, yeah. So like to give you an idea, like how I would go like 100 meters and stop and then like go again.
And it was so incredibly hot.
Oh, it was
crazy.
It was like
in the 40s.
In the 40s, yeah. And like every now and again, someone would stop on their scooter and go like, "Mas gas," you know, to tell me like to pick up the speed. And the thing is, I know that, but it's very hard to actually do that when you're scared. Anyway, eventually we get there. By that time, I mean, I was exhausted, okay? So we pick up the boards, because obviously we're still doing the volcano boarding.
Oh, no.
So we're going, so they give you these funny safety suits. We look like little minions, you know, you get like safety goggles, like a little, like we literally look like minions. But it's only 45 minutes to get to the top, and it's really nice because
half an hour, I think.
Yeah, like, and the thing is, there's like pockets of like small groups of 6 people here and there of people who have come in to do this, but it wasn't busy as such. So we get to the top. I'm scared of everything. So I'm like a bit scared of this, like going down, because like, you know, everyone's been like, ooh, like they measure the speed. If you go with a group, they measure the speed, and it's like, you know, like some people have hurt themselves. Anyway, so like I went down the volcano very slowly. Fiona didn't brake, and she just like went for it and went down it. But when we got to the bottom, I mean, the views were ridiculous. And we got to the bottom, and I said to Fiona, you know, I would love to take a picture here with the bike. And so like we walked back to like the entrance, you know, where we stopped. It's not really an entrance, but it's a national park, I suppose. And like you pay for this board rental at the bottom. It's like a little wooden hut, you know. Yeah. Anyway, so we went back there and we returned everything. And I said, am I allowed to ride up there? I just want to take a picture. And they're like, of course, you know, like why not? And I didn't put my gear back on because it was over 40 degrees Celsius and we were already sweating. And I thought, oh, I'm just going like a few meters. And ironically, getting to Cerro Negro is really hard because you're riding on deep volcanic sand. But then once you get there, it's much more compact. So it just felt a little bit more like gravel rather than, it wasn't that.
Yeah, you were able to ride it very easily.
So, I mean, I didn't even have my gear on. I was just like, I'm just going to ride up to it. And like we took these photos, which I love from me in Cerro Negro. But then when we posted them, everyone's like, how can you ride like this without no protective gear? And you know what's ironic? We wear all the gear all the time. Yeah. And for that minute, I was like, you know what? I want a photo in front of this. And it was just like a little bit of this gravel. Yeah. And it was like the last stretch. And like we got so much, we got so much crap about it.
It's unreal, isn't it? Unreal. The amount of vitriol you get. If you know, I filmed once. I did the last piece on one of my vids, literally at the top of my road. It's like 400 or 500 meters at the top of my road. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one-way road into the little village where I live. And I'd taken my gloves off to work the cameras. And then for the last little bit where I said, you know, just signed off on a video. Hope you've enjoyed it. See you later. I'm riding without gloves. The abuse I got just
it's crazy,
for that.
Isn't it? I'm like, but you know what was most ironic is that like we really do wear it all the time, you know. And then I was like, anyway. You asked me about the best and the worst. It was an amazing feeling. It was a huge achievement to get there. I absolutely loved it. And on the way back, by this time, I'm very low on energy because there's nowhere to buy food.
It was getting quite late.
It was like by this time it was like like afternoon. Okay, we've been like sort of on the road all day. We'd only had breakfast. We're like really tired, and now we're heading back. And I always, whenever I go somewhere where the off-road is like more on the challenging side, if I come back the same way, I'm always going to be better on the way back because I'm like, I know I've done it on the way there. It's kind of easier to go back, right? And then I was like doing so well. I think I was going 100 or 200 meters and then stopped for a breather.
Previously she was going incredibly slowly.
And then like I picked up the speed, and I think I'd just done like 2 miles. And we came off once, but then we picked it up, went again. But I had just done like a solid 2 miles without stopping. And Fiona, you know, like sometimes it's not good to hear any praise on the intercom. She's like, "You're doing so well. Keep going. Remember, you can't hurt yourself in sand." And within a split second of her saying that, like basically the front wheel was like, you know, digging into the sand. I tried to recover it, but my foot got stuck under the bike and the foot pack went like right into it. Like literally my foot was bruised from the top and from the bottom. And that was really excruciating pain. Yeah, and I was just like screaming, right, in pain. And then Fiona immediately lifted up the bike. And at this point, I couldn't even speak to Fiona properly because I was like in so much pain. And I just instinctively just crawled to the shade.
I mean, before that, I lifted up the bike and I thought she moved her foot out.
Oh no.
And I was like, is it out? Is it out? Is it out? Because obviously I wasn't going to, it was so hot and we were tired, no energy. So I wasn't going to lift the bike up properly. So I was going to put the bike back down. She goes, okay, it's out. And then she screamed as I put it down. I was like, oh my God. I thought I squished her foot again, but and then I had to lift it up again.
Do you know what I had to do? I had to, instead of moving my foot, I had to pull on my hands to move the foot. Because, you know, when you can't actually, when it's not responding to you, when you try to move something. Anyway, so I was like this on my pants, move my foot out of it. And then I crawled onto the other side where there was a bit of shade. And I thought I was going to pass out and I wanted to be in the shade because it was so hot that day. And then Fiona was like, you know, Dr. Cheng again. She goes okay, I'm going to analyze your foot. So she takes the foot out of the boot and she starts doing her whatever she does to do an assess. She then correctly assessed that it wasn't broken. And then by that time she goes okay, let's pop your boot back on before it starts before it's too swollen. And I'm like, you can't do that. That's so mean, you know. And then she's like,
no, because it was, you got to understand, it was probably fall. The tours had already finished. I don't have a license. We're in the middle of nowhere. And even if I had a license, I wouldn't have been able to ride this bike, because this bike was super high for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wouldn't have known how to ride it because at that point I'd never been on the bike. And so I was like, we should put your foot back in and, rest up a little bit, but then we've got to get going because it's going to be hard.
Yeah. Basically, it's so ironic because on the way to the volcano, we saw a few cuttles, people with locals with cattle. I wonder where we're going, but I mean, anyway, they were there, and a few people passed us on a scooter, locals, but we definitely didn't see any vans or organized buses. We didn't see anybody. And then we realized very quickly that there was no way that I was going to ride this bike. So we have no camping gear. We have no food. I don't know how we were doing for water, but the thing is, there was no way I was going to ride this bike. And Fiona doesn't have a license. And everyone told us, get a tour in case something happens and you get stuck in the afternoon. And I was very, very worried at this point because I was like, how the hell are we even going to get out of there? And about 15 minutes later...
No, whilst we had already tried to get up. So she's already sat on the bike, but she can't because we tried to ride it.
Yeah, we tried, but it was just too painful.
And so then I got off the bike and I was essentially pushing her from the back, but in sand, which is,
we didn't go anywhere. But this big, yellow, you know, these big yellow American school buses, like there was like this converted bus just pulls up behind us, which is also really scary because everyone rides super fast there because they want to get to the sand. Stop. Yeah. And it really scared me actually when they came because they only just stopped it like so close to us. And this guy comes out that we met at the bottom of the volcano because he saw us on the bike and he was like riding himself, and he was really happy to see two women on a bike, you know, and he was like super sweet and just said hi, and he liked bikes, and we had a little chit chat to him. I mean, he only spoke Spanish, so, you know, we just like spoke some basic Spanish to each other. And then he's like, what happened? And I said, I hurt myself. And he didn't even speak any further. He like picked me up. Of course, like they were going to help me out. He picked me up and like plonked me in the bus, right? And he's like, okay, stay here. I said, but what about my bike? And he goes like, looks through the bus and he's like, Jose, come here. And like, I was very lucky because Jose was very tall. And, you know, like in Central America, people are not
sure, yeah.
And I was on the 800 GS with a hired seat, and then this guy comes up who has, I mean, later we became friends with him, so we found out that he has only ever ridden a 125cc. He'd never ever been on a bike like this, and they went in Spanish. They said, it's like yours, just heavier, just, you know, lots of speed. So this guy had never done anything like this. He was having the time of his life.
He didn't even have any protection.
I mean, we have helmets like XS, so it's like nothing would have fit him anyway. So Jose goes off. I mean, he rode so fast.
Yeah, it was incredible.
We are on this bus with like all these tourists, and then we went back, and it was ironic because the bus belonged to a hostel, which was opposite the hotel where we were staying. So it was really like a lift home, you know.
Door to door, yeah.
And then when they saw me at the receptionist, they told me not to ride there. They were like,
we said you shouldn't have gone.
Anyway, then it's a completely other story that we won't go into, but the hospital visit was interesting. And then it turned out that we had to stay a whole month in Leon because I couldn't ride the bike, right? I mean, It was luckily only sprained, but it was very, very badly sprained. And if I'm really honest, I still wasn't comfortable riding, but Fiona had booked that flight from Bogota that we mentioned earlier. So we really felt that we had to like start to get going. And that was like the hardest thing that has happened on the trip, because obviously whenever there's an injury, but then I remember also thinking it was like one of the nicest places I could have hurt myself, because Leon is such an amazing place. I mean, I really loved it, and we just made the most of it. We had some like Spanish lessons, and I mean, it was kind of the best and the worst, you know, like all in one.
I love that about, well, I used to think it was just adventure travel, stuff like that happens where, you know, just things have a habit of working out, don't they? As you said, when you think, oh my God, I'm done, then somebody turns up and someone will ride your bike, and they're driving a bus which is going to the place across the road from where you stay. The way the stars align at times. I found that's life. That is life, isn't it?
You know how you said that you weren't traveling with tools? I mean, neither did we. I'm so sorry. Neither did we. And then we twice had a flat tire, and again we have nothing to fix that. And both times we were within walking distance of like a little, you know, these little garages that are like all over. I mean, how does that happen? Because obviously, like, isn't that mad? But like somehow it always works out.
Yeah. I've just found in life now that no matter how bad things are, you just have to keep going, and eventually things work out. Something comes along and sorts it out, doesn't it? It's like I always say to people, just never give up, whether you're traveling, whether you're overland traveling or just in life. Just never give up. Just keep going, keep going. Figure out a way, and eventually the stars align and the solution comes along, doesn't it? It's weird how life goes like that. Nice one, Lee. Good question. Ladies, we've got 3 more questions. Are you okay for that? Yeah. Okay. Do you need a break at all? Comfort break, anything? Yeah. Okay. Right, next one. Martin Yoxall. How you doing, Martin? Hello all. Hope you're all well. What would each of you say is each other's best quality or habit in reference to your travels together? Have we touched on that earlier?
No, I don't think. I will say that Fiona is incredibly organized, but she's also, I mean, I'm careful with money, but Fiona's really, really good at budgeting, you know.
Okay.
And I know, like we said before, like that hotel in Costa Rica, we don't live a life of luxury. I mean, generally what we do is we don't stay in dorm rooms, but we do try to get the cheapest hotel room we can. And in Europe, we can't afford to stay in hotels, and then we camp. And going forward, we'll do a mix of both. Yeah. But Fiona is very, very good staying on top of finances, budgeting. You know, if I get the wrong change bag, I won't even notice, you know. And Fiona will be like, and I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, well, I'm waiting for the rest, you know, like, but like, I don't even
You're 5 cents short.
You know, I don't notice these things. And like, just like all the like little paperwork and like these things, I'm just not like, that's very helpful for border crossings. She's got like a little folder with all the bits and bobs.
Sandra doesn't find border crossings like stressful or anything, because she just sits there and she just
lets it happen. What's been your worst border?
Worst border, Panama.
Panama.
I tell you why. Because
a little bit our fault.
No.
A little bit our fault in terms of because we didn't want to pay the bribe.
Okay. So
is that Costa Rica to Panama?
Sorry?
Was that Costa Rica to Panama or Panama?
Yeah. You know how you get these runners at the border crossing, and really all they do is they point out where to go, and then they want a tip at the end of it, right? Yeah. So I would just be honest, like we are not a fan of that, because like I should be able to go through a border crossing, and I shouldn't need that. And I understand for people who don't speak the languages or something, but like sometimes when there's like it's not very regulated. It could be like a child, you know, that's like essentially just like pointing towards the desk. Yeah. And then at the end, everyone wants a little bit. The child wants a little bit. And then what they do is they want you to like pay the bribe so that you get through quicker and stuff like that. And I don't even want to be involved in this bribe stuff. So like we basically don't use them. But we were in Panama and we turned down this runner, you know, like because we just say from the beginning, you know, I don't want them to help me out and then be like, I'm not paying you. And I said, look, I speak Spanish and I won't need your help. Thank you very much.
You know, like, different to any other border that we've crossed.
Yeah, same. But then the guy who was basically just letting people through, he basically was taking $5 from everyone so that he wouldn't check their bags. He never wanted to check anyone's bags anyway, but he basically, that's what they do, you know, they say, if you give me $5, I don't check your bags. Yeah. And then he wanted these $5, and then we were like, we're not paying it, you know, out of principle. I mean, obviously it would have been much easier to pay the $5, but I feel a little bit that if you pay it, they'll continue demanding it. So I feel like we need to create a better space for everyone who's then going to pass. And I know there's a big debate, should you pay bribes or not? Against it. And basically we weren't going to, he made it so painful. First of all, he got us to carry our luggage incredibly far away from our bike. So that was the first thing.
Like every single piece of our luggage.
And then he individually went through everything in each bag, you know, and you've got like the clothes, the underwear, everything. And it was just like so annoying. And he was doing it so slowly, and he was basically making a whole mess out of the stuff in front, and then making us to clean it up and fold it all up again and put it back, you know. And it was horrible, wasn't it? And the worst thing is that it wasn't genuine. It wasn't like a genuine random check. He wanted his $5. We refused to pay it, and that's the price we had to pay for it. It took over an hour for him to really slowly go through our stuff. I think I lost my patience with him a bit.
You lost your patience a little bit with them. And then he had to remind us that they were a person of authority. And we're like, okay, we'll be quiet now because obviously we don't want any trouble.
But it was annoying.
Yeah, I think was it Panama to Costa Rica where I had a bit of an issue.
Yeah.
It was somewhere in Central America anyway. And it was the same thing. You know, they wanted the tax when you were in the queue. And if you didn't pay the tax, you had to join another queue where there was nobody in the queue, but nobody actually, they dealt with the other queue before they dealt with you. Yeah. So you were stood there for hours. And then once you got to the front, they then tell you, oh, well, you need something photocopied. And they've got a photocopier behind them, but they won't let you use it. They send you into the town, but you have to go to a specific place because that's his cousin and he obviously gets a bung back from that. And then you go and do that, you come back and they're like, right, okay, and now you need a photocopy of this. And you're just like, You couldn't have told me that before I left. You're just like ping-ponging. As you said, it's just...
You know how I said that Fiona's very organized? So because we knew how it works with the photocopies, what we had is we had 5 copies of every single document they could possibly ask for any border crossing. And Fiona had all these photocopies.
Brilliant. I was like, oh, photocopy, here you go.
Yeah, she always, I know exactly what you mean, because they always came to us and they said, you need to go there and print. We said, we've got everything what you need. But that's thanks to Fiona, because she's very organized with the little...
Everyone needs a Fiona when you're traveling overland, don't you? Martin also says, in the interest of balance, what is each other's worst quality or habit? All the best.
Ooh. I think, it's not an issue now, but what really bothered me is when we were riding up, Fiona is obviously very confident. Anyone can see, how do you not have a license and then jump onto a Tiger 900cc and then go off-road on it the way she does? She's obviously very, very confident, but she, and I'm not, I'm like the complete opposite. I mean, I won't come off the bike because I don't push myself. I like to go slowly. And what normally happens is if something scares me, I'll stop, I'll analyze, think about it, I'll freak myself out about it. During that time,
the worst possible.
I do tend to stop always at the worst. If there's like a little river crossing or something, I like to stop at the worst point.
At the very end.
It's just so annoying, But the thing is, it's just my process and what I need to do. But then Fiona, meanwhile, is cooking up in the heat, right? And so am I, but I'm there causing this delay. And then Fiona will be like, you've done this before, speed is your friend, and she'll come up with all this stuff, that I know is true, but hearing it from someone who at the time didn't have a license, I found this incredibly irritating, because I then didn't find, it wasn't like a supporting.
It wasn't comforting.
What I wanted her to do is I wanted her to be like, take your time, we can do this, but Fiona's like, what's the problem?
Come on.
It's some throttle, so it was...
I only say this 20, 30 minutes in.
Oh, come on. Anyway, but it's the delivery of, or sometimes if it got really tricky and I said, I'm sorry, do you mind getting off just for this little section?
I always have to walk.
And then she would find this really annoying. I mean, in all fairness, she doesn't weigh that much, but it is a bit easier, right? Not to have someone on the back. We don't have that issue anymore because we're too up. But that was her worst quality. I think that she was being impatient with me when I was scared in off-road environments. but that's because she's a confident rider. What's my worst quality?
Your worst? I don't know if it...
Maybe I'm a bit slow in packing.
Yeah, you're if anything, that might just be me. But she's very laid back and very chilled. So that's actually very good in when we're traveling. We don't have a time frame in that sense anyway, but she's very laid back and she'll just the time management is probably not there. But
you know what I think? We both have worked
into it.
No, but we both have worked very hard, right? I worked for 10 years, really 24/7 to just be able to do this now, right? I mean, it's obviously not cheap, and it took a lot of sacrifices to get here. And so I'm not in a rush, because my work, I worked crazy hours. Okay, it was like 6 to 8 or 10 every night. It was really crazy hours for such a long amount of time, and now I feel like I have the luxury of taking my time.
You've earned it. You've got the time now. Yeah.
Time. Fiona doesn't.
I think it's just, I don't know, it's very different. If you say to her, oh, we're going to leave at 9 or something, she thinks she just brushes her teeth, wash her face or whatever, and she packs the wash bag and then we're ready to go. And I was like, we're not ready to go. We still got to do everything else. But that was the only thing, probably.
Well, you can see that you two of you balance each other out massively. You can see that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The yin and the yang. Where were we? Oh, yeah, we've answered that one. Cheers, Martin. Thank you for that. Second last one from Harley. How's it, guys? Just a short one as usual. For the three of you, do you remember a time when you were humbled the most? Oh, that's a good question. Wow.
I tell you why it's hard, because it happens to us a lot.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I will say is that normally the poorer someone is, the more generous there is.
100%.
And I'll give you an example, and it's just because of the level of tourism, okay? I don't mean to say like about the country as a general, but in Costa Rica, there's a lot of American tourists that will go, and I say American because obviously it's further for Europeans, so they have more American tourists there, but a lot of people go to only very specific points in Mexico, then they skip a lot of Central America because it's like scary and dangerous, and then everyone goes to Panama and Costa Rica because it's safe there, right? Yeah. And as a result of that, you've got like a lot of tourism over there, and also the prices are like crazy hiked up, and also no one is like, people want like a little tip when they help you with like little stuff, you know, they kind of expect it, you know. And you don't have that in Nicaragua or El Salvador or any of these other countries. And then like what I just explained, you know, how they bailed me out with the bike and stuff, you know. We ended up becoming friends with Jose, who you know, rode the bike out from, you know, the volcano and stuff. But like no one like expected money for do you know what I mean? They just happened to be there. They were happy to help, and it's like, if that would have happened in Costa Rica, do you know what I mean? In Costa Rica, like everything costs money. I think I'm humbled by always seeing that really the less people have, the more kinder they are, and the most generous they are. And this is the most humbling, because it really, I feel that way. Like, and it happens so many times that I honestly can't think of one example in particular, but where people have been just like so kind, right?
Yeah, kind and generous with time and everything like this.
They open up their lives to you, don't they? Yes. Not just their lives, their families and the homes to you a lot of the time. It's incredible, isn't it, when you meet people that do stuff like that? I used to think that would never happen. That could only happen, like, you know, when you're in these far-flung countries outside of the sort of developed Western world. But do you know what? It happens. I see it all the time. I've had it in the UK. People just, I think fundamentally, people are nice. There are arseholes out there, obviously, but most people, absolutely. But most people are decent. I've always said this from after traveling. Most people are exactly the same. They want to look after their families and their loved ones. They want to look after their friends, and if they can help you, they will. You know, Sam Manicom's a big one for this. He always says, just greet everybody with a smile. Even if they're shouting at you, just greet them with a smile, because ultimately most people don't mean you any harm. And as long as they ascertain you're not a threat, you know, people are good. Generally, people are good. Yeah. I've got to say, I've been really humbled after the trip, to be honest. Just for me, my personal situation sort of changed a couple of years ago, where I made the jump from going like full-time employed with the police, and I went full-time YouTube. So it's a big leap of faith, and the sort of generosity and kindness that just people that followed the channel have shown me, even to this day, you know, 2 years later, people are still what we're answering here on Patreon. You know, I couldn't do this full-time without the support I get on Patreon. And there's nearly 500 people on that who are, you know, contributing and helping. And it's really humbling to think that people are consciously making that choice to do something like that. So a big thank you to all of you. Yeah, cool. Last question then. Simon Lewis. Hi, ladies. Fiona, as an adrenaline junkie, what has been the most exhilarating experience you've done? And does Sandra share your same passion for these experiences?
Definitely not. I'm scared. I just want to say I'm scared to get on the ladder. I'm scared of heights.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I could not go on the top of a ladder. That would be too much for me.
Wow. The most exhilarating.
Whew, probably a bungee jump, isn't it?
Yeah, probably. The first thing that I did was skydiving, and I thought that was going to give me the biggest thrill.
Yeah.
And then I jumped out the plane, and it didn't give me much of a thrill.
Seriously?
Yeah, because I think the thrill comes from fear. I think a bit of fear gives you more excitement, I think. And because I just was not scared when we jumped out the plane, I really enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, really, really enjoyed it. But I finished and my friend was like, how was it? And I was like, oh yeah, it was really great.
It's all right.
It didn't give me the thrill that I thought it was going to give me. And she was like, why? And I think it's because of that. But then when I did a bungee jump, because you have to physically jump yourself, it gave me a bit more of a buzz.
But no one pushed you out of the plane, or did they?
No, they jump with you because it was attached.
Oh yeah, you're attached.
That's fine. Okay, fine.
So, I mean, obviously it was exciting, but it didn't give me as much of a thrill as I thought for the bungee jump did, because there was that slight fear element to it because you had to do it yourself.
Do you know what
but of course, nothing beats riding pillion to me off-road.
obviously. Something I really want to do it, but I've not done it yet, is I would love to go cage diving with great whites.
This is what I want to do.
I actually, funny enough, I mean, I'm scared of heights, but I would do that, funny enough.
This is 100% what I want to do. Happily.
Sure, go on.
I said happily, we should do it together.
Right, I'm up for it, definitely. I wanted to do it when I was in Australia. I was going to go to Perth and they do it off there, but I didn't have the time and the money by that point. So it's something I definitely would love to do.
Cape Town, actually, you can do it in Cape Town.
Yeah.
Well, my original plan was to sort of go all the way around. I was going to go down the west of Africa, South Africa, and then back up the east, but I didn't. It went a bit wrong in West Africa.
At the time when you were going, could you still do the whole loop?
There were issues along the way. DRC was an issue at the time, just because of Boko Haram, the Islamic fundamentalists. They're the ones that kidnapped all the Nigerian schoolgirls back in 2012 time. Mm-hmm. Well, they were exploding all through sort of Central Africa, and they'd actually just come into Mauritania when I was going through it. That's kind of why I ended up having loads of issues with police and gangs and all sorts because of that. But because of that, the DRC, the Congo weren't letting you cross from the Congo to the DRC just because they said it was too dangerous. It's weird. Some people could get across, but a guy that I was traveling with at the time, he carried on going because he lived in Cape Town, so he had to keep going. Well, he just couldn't get into DRC. They just wouldn't let him in for his own safety. So he ended up just shipping from there to Cape Town. But I know Angola was one that you just couldn't get in. So you had to try and figure out a way of getting past Angola down to Namibia. But you could come up the east. You could still travel all up the east at that point.
I mean, that was up until recently, actually, wasn't it? I mean,
that's right. It's a shame, isn't it? Where were we? Oh, yeah, with the sharks. See, with me, I would love to cage dive with the sharks, and I don't mind being under the water. I'm fine with being under the water, but in the sea, like open water, being on the water, like treading water or swimming, scares the living daylights out of me.
Really?
Yeah, it's weird. But I want to row across the Atlantic. I've got this thing in my head about rowing the Atlantic.
Really?
But you have to get in to clean the bottom of the boat. And that scares the shit out of me. It's just like the thought of being over the side of the boat with my head above the water before I went under. Nah, can't cope with that.
You're gonna have to get over that fear before you do that.
Oh yeah, I know, yeah. And there's a small matter of it.
Whilst you do it.
Yeah, what a way. Yeah, why not? Let's just go for it. Right, the last question. Simon's got a second question. It's the last one. Second question. Which other world motorcycle travelers have inspired you for your journeys? Good luck on your future travels.
Thank you. I will say only because I have to say that when we very first started out, we were not so in tune at all with, I mean, we were active on Instagram, but we didn't realize that there was like all these other amazing people basically doing essentially what we do, and that it's such a great community to be part of and share information. And really now we've got like so many friendships that we build with other people that are currently doing sort of around the world trip. But I will say when we met Tracy, it was the first person really that we really like connected with on the road. And she was really in touch with like the whole ADV community and everything. And that inspired, I think it was really so special to spend time with her that we wanted to, we were anyway already using social media and Instagram. And I think during the time, the two people that inspired me the most were my friend Natalia, who rode from her place in Poland all the way to Cape Town. And then the other one was my friend from Germany, or like she lived in Germany at the time. And she was in Africa at the time that we started following. They were both, I think, in Africa at the same time. And the reason they inspired me so much was because I have a big fear of sand. And I think it was around the time that thing happened with the volcano. And when I was following their stories, all I could see is, like the bike, sand, and they'd be like, oh, today 180 kilometers of this. And I'm like, I was like celebrating that I got to Cerro Negro, which I told you, you could in theory do that in 40 minutes if you just like powered through, right? Yeah. And I thought that's what they do day in, day out. And I think I was just like really, really amazed. And also I guess I found it, going to Africa was like, definitely sounded like more like crazy, like to go to Africa and ride. I mean, it's a lot more complicated than just going from Alaska to Patagonia, Actually, you don't need visas for most of the countries. It's so easy. I mean, it's slow, but it's easy to get in, get out. It's very simple. And in Africa, it's just like so many other things to keep in mind. And I would say Tracy inspired us loads. I mean, we're all going into detail, but like she basically lost her husband at a relatively young age. And then, I mean, he was only 45 or something. Then she decided to do her motorbike license and then travel the world on a motorbike all by herself. Brilliant. And then we met her at the border and like, she's like not stopping anytime soon. And I mean, that to me was so inspiring that she's a woman by herself who had gone through that, and then turned it around, and in mid-50s, late 50s. And
she's our road mama.
Yeah, we call her road mama now. But that was hugely inspiring to meet her. And then I think that Natalia and Leah were hugely inspiring. But I will say that during the pandemic, it was actually, we've met a lot. It's been incredible because we met so many other women or just people in general that are traveling the world that had to temporarily come back to Europe. And by chance, because we were all forced to be back in Europe, we everyone kind of knows each other and we were able to meet so many inspiring people. But I think for me, they were the first ones that I was like, wow, that's really inspirational.
Mine are a bit different. Mine will be Ellie from the 800s, just purely because when we met them at the art competition and she did so awesome in this ride.
You need to explain maybe that the ARG is the adventure ride competition in Germany.
Right. And she did some incredible things and she's short. And so I was like, oh, someone short riding an adventure bike. Yes.
And she was on the 800 GS, which was the bike we had ridden up until that point.
Yeah. And she did some amazing riding. And it just again inspired me to be like, well, it means that I can do this. Why can't I do this? And then,
and she's since left and then around the world. And she got into the final, and then she did the GS Trophy qualifier. I mean, she's an incredible rider.
How tall are you, Fiona?
How tall am I? I thought I was taller than I was until I measured myself the other day again. I'm 161, just over 161 and a half.
Oh, what's that in feet?
5'3".
Okay, right, all right.
I'm like average height as well.
It's still short for a motorbike though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Definitely.
For an adventure bike, we should say.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the adventure world is built for tall people, should we say? I mean, like everything is like tall or like I need a double XS for helmet, but nobody has this in the Well, it's very hard. There's we found one and then I had to put extra padding around.
She's double XS and normally you can get S and sometimes you can get XS.
Yeah.
But to get double XS is very hard. Yeah.
Wow. God. I always find it funny because I get a lot of people asking me in comments when I review bikes, what they say to me, I'm 5'1", I'm 5'3", 5'4". Would it be okay for me? And I'm just like, I'm 6'3". I really couldn't tell you. I've got, there's no bike that's too tall for me. They all fit me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't know. Just try it. Ride it for yourself.
Yeah.
The overland scene. I've not seen it, you guys, at any of the, the festivals and stuff. I do like the Overland event quite frequently.
We went to the ABR last year because we were doing events and to John O'Groats. Were you at the ABR?
No, not last year. I'm there this year on the 24th. I'm only there for one day, one evening, so I'll be there. Are you at this year's one?
Well, actually, we got invited to go along, but then we thought, we would have just set off, and it would have just been too difficult to come back because we are now going to Germany. But the ABR was my first festival. I'd never been to a festival before, so my first experience. And
it's massive, isn't it?
It was really amazing, and it was so cool because we met a lot of people that we've been following anyway for a long time, and vice versa. We had people come up to us, and we had a lovely time. I mean, it was really great. And now we're going to the Bru Tike event, and I'm actually really looking forward to it because we've had such a great time at the ABR, and I think, they're kind of it's designed in a similar way, isn't it? Like-minded people getting together, you get to ride different bikes, you've got off-road, you've got music. I look forward to it.
I prefer the smaller ones, like the Overland is nice because it's, how many do they have there? Maybe they might have 1,000 people, maybe, or it could be in the sort of 400 or 500 range. It's much more intimate, and I prefer that. And then there's a newish one called the Armchair Festival. I'm doing that this year. So I'm looking forward to that. Matt and Reese are nice guys there as well. So that should be good. Well, hopefully I'll see you sort of on the circuit once you've completed your trap. Well, you might stay on the road forever, but I might see you one day at one of the events.
I'm sure we will. Yes. And I think you were doing the Armchair Festival boot camp, and we were doing that too, right?
No, he's doing the Armchair Live. We did the Armchair.
Okay.
I'm doing the one in September.
Okay, got it.
I'm there the Friday, Saturday this year. Yeah. We do have some questions still on Instagram, but I'm conscious of the time. So if you want to answer the questions, feel free to head over to my Instagram, and I think there's like 3 or 4 questions there. If you want to answer them, it's up to you.
Sure.
But I think we'll call that quits for tonight. That's nearly 3 hours you've been on here. So thank you so much. Ladies, before we go, can I pass it over to you if you want to give any shout outs, if there's if you want people to follow your YouTube, your social media, just over to you. Feel free.
Okay.
Plug away.
So since the pandemic, we've actually started our YouTube channel. So you can now see all the trip that we've done from Canada to Colombia, even the ride to Cerro Negro volcano, that's all out on YouTube. We've started doing some bike reviews as well. We are a little bit delayed. So right now Fiona's editing our trip from Lens and to John O'Groats. But it's really hard actually to do it whilst you're on the road. But we are getting a lot of time in there. Also, we've got our website, and on the website we basically just kind of talk about the countries that we've ridden to, so like just some highlights or some trip itineraries or some helpful reviews, so you can check that out. And of course the most active we are on Instagram. So we generally, we're just having a mini break now, but we normally share stories every day, and we're very active. And if you want to support our travels, you can always buy us a gas of tank. It's an option.
Actually, we recently we're in the process of opening up our shop with our new logo sign. So that's
just for people to support us. So.
Right, so I'll leave all those links down below, folks. If you listen to the podcast, check out the show notes, and if you're watching the YouTube vid, have a look at the description and all the links to. Oh, blimey! Sorry, excuse me, just lost my earphone. And all the links will be down below. Awesome. That's no problem at all. It was absolute pleasure.
It was lovely chatting to you. And I just want to say, because I didn't have an opportunity while we were speaking, I love your commentary when you do the off-road riding.
Yeah, it's the best.
It is
priceless. So funny. It's like, it makes it, doesn't it?
Yeah. I think it's better than the riding. Like for me, I just love the commentary. It's brilliant.
I do play on it a little bit. I'm not very comfortable off road, but I've got to say I'm starting to see the attraction in it. I am starting to see the attraction in it. So
I have to say I'm amazed because obviously you did the big trip on, it wasn't an adventure bike, right? I mean, it's a sports bike. And I mean, I can't even imagine. Yeah.
You have to get through, don't you? So you paddle your way, you drop the bike.
I tell you what's very strange. The few times that I tried to ride a bike like that, I just couldn't. Like I don't know. Just because you've got a motorbike license, you can't just. Well, I mean, obviously you can ride any bike, but I just never felt comfortable on that kind of bike. And I know. I mean, RTW Roxy. I think you also did spoke to her. I mean,
that's amazing what she's done.
And I'm like, I mean. It just proves you can do it on any bike. I personally couldn't, but it's so impressive that.
I think you'd be surprised. I mean, you plainly could. Both of you plainly could. The mere fact you've done already what you've done proves that you're the type of people that will just make it happen. You know, I've always said this: any bike will go anywhere, but not any rider will.
Yeah.
And you're obviously the type of riders who will. You know, you'll just make it happen. You'll do it. You would do it. It's not very comfortable, but you would do it. You get it. Right, ladies, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. It really has.
It was such a pleasure speaking to you. Yes, thanks for having us.
Brilliant. And I look forward to hearing or following on for the rest of your journeys, wherever that takes you.
Okay.
Wish you the best of luck. And if I can help with anything in the future, just you've got me on Instagram. Just DM me, and if I can help with anything, I will. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Awesome. Folks, thank you so much for joining us for this one. I hope you've enjoyed it. Make sure you give the ladies a follow on any of our social media. What can we say? Thank you very much for following the podcast. If you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, can you try and leave a little review there if you can, and a rating? It helps massively. All right, folks, keep doing your thing. Get on out there whenever you can. Look after those that you love. But most importantly, live your life. Woo-ha!